Hello and welcome guys. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy. This is Necromancer of the Shadows, Chapter 651. If you still want to fight, I am more than happy to play with you, Evan said once the void rift closed, and he saw Mogul was looking at him. But keep in mind that if you decide to continue, this place will really turn into a graveyard. This time after hearing Evan, Mogul didn't mock him and looked at him with a serious look on his face. He looked at the situation outside of the barrier and furrowed his eyebrows. The fight has been going on for about 15 minutes, and Mogul has already noticed that no matter how many times the orcs kill the shadow undeads, they keep coming back to life. On the other hand, unlike the shadow undeads, the orcs were dying for real. The shadow undeads had already killed approximately 70 S-ranked orcs, and the casualties would continue to rise if the fighting continued. Mogul closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Although he wanted nothing more than to kill Evan and his shadow undeads, he knew the situation was not in his favor. If we lose more of our members, our overall strength will drop sharply, and it will become difficult for us to maintain our position in the city, Mogul said inwardly and opened his eyes. If you want to talk, then stop them first, he said to Evan while pointing at his shadow undeads. Evan looked at Mogul's face for a few seconds when he heard him and nodded his head. He used shadow senses and ordered his shadow undeads to stop fighting. When the shadow undeads received Evan's order, all of them immediately backed away. The orcs tried to chase after them, but Mogul signaled them to stop. Once the fight between the orcs and the shadow undeads stopped, Mogul looked back at Evan and said in a cold voice, "Return everything that you have stolen from the treasure vault, and you can leave from here." Hearing Mogul, Evan immediately shook his head. "I worked so hard to steal them. There is no way I can give you everything back," he said and paused for a moment. "At most, I can return 20% of what I stole from the vault." Mogul's body started to shake from anger when he heard Evan. "Are you kidding with me?" he asked while trying his best not to start the fight once again. Evan was unfazed when he saw Mogul's entire body was shaking from anger. "You already know I am not going to hand over everything, so let's stop wasting our time," he said in a neutral tone. "I will take a step back and will hand over 50% of the things I stole to you, and you will let us go from here." I quote, "And let me tell you that I will not back down from 50%, so don't try to negotiate with me," Evan once again said when he noticed Mogul was about to negotiate with him. Mogul closed his mouth when he heard Evan and looked at him for a few seconds. "All right, you can keep the 50%. Evan raised an eyebrow when Mogul agreed to him so easily. Even the other orcs who heard Mogul were stunned, but they didn't dare to voice out their thoughts. Although Evan found it strange that Mogul agreed to his demands so easily, he didn't think too much about it, and nodded his head. "Before I hand over the things, remove this barrier, so that I can leave from here immediately after handing them over. Don't be in such a hurry. Before you leave, there are a few things that I want to ask you," Mogul said when he heard Evan. Evan narrowed his eyes when he heard Mogul. "What do you want to ask? Did you come to World Domain recently?" Evan did not answer immediately when he heard Mogul and looked at him for some time. When he did not find anything wrong with Mogul's expressions, he nodded his head. "I came to the World Domain this morning." When Mogul heard Evan, his eyes sparkled for some reason. "You are still an S-ranker, right?" Evan was baffled when he heard Mogul's excitement-filled voice and looked at him with a weird look on his face. "Can't you tell by my aura that I am a S-ranker or not?" "Of course, I can tell that you are an S-ranker. It is just that the power you displayed earlier was far stronger than even a normal rank 1 core evolver. So I just want to make sure that you are not using an artifact to hide your true rank." Evan was genuinely confused when he heard Mogul, and couldn't understand what he was thinking. He had just killed some of his gang members, and even robbed their treasure vault, but the way Mogul was acting was making him somewhat uncomfortable. What the hell is this guy thinking? He thought inwardly and decided to immediately use Shadow Possession skill, in case Mogul tried to do something suspicious. "I have an offer for you. Do you want to hear it?" Suddenly Mogul asked in a serious voice. "If you want to offer me to join your warlord gang, then you can forget about that. I am planning to use the Tower of Ascension once I gather a few more things from here." Hearing Evan, Mogul shook his head. "Don't worry, I have no intentions of inviting you to join our gang. In fact, instead of calling it an offer, it would be much appreciated to call it a deal." Evan raised an eyebrow when he heard Mogul and asked in a curious voice, "What kind of deal?" "It is a deal related to the 4 great clans of the city. If you accept this deal, I can assure you that the other 3 clans will also give you 50% of the items from their treasure vault without any hesitation." Chapter 652. "Are you sure it is not a trap?" Malak asked Evan in a serious voice. Evan looked at the luxurious cottage in front of him and said while nodding his head, "He already removed the protection barrier of the castle, so we can leave whenever we want. Besides, he entered one of the rooms of the cottage and said before closing the door, 'If it is really a trap, I will make him regret trying to set me up.'" Malak looked at the closed door of the room Evan had entered and scratched the back of his head. "What a mess," he muttered to himself and went inside another room of the cottage. Evan and Malak were still in the castle of the Warlord gang. Earlier, Evan agreed to listen to Mogul about the deal he wanted to talk about. But before telling Evan what kind of deal he wanted to make, Mogul said that he needed to take care of the aftermath of the fight and offered Evan to stay in their castle. Although Evan was suspicious of Mogul, he could tell that he really wanted to talk to him about something, so he agreed to stay in the castle. "It is already late, so he will probably talk to me tomorrow morning," Evan said to himself after entering the room, and took a long shower before doing anything else. "I chose to rob Warlord Gang because in Grunk's memories, I saw that they forced many people to sign a contract with them," but Evan muttered in a low voice and narrowed his eyes. "I didn't see anyone else other than the orcs inside the castle. Where are the people they forced to sign a contract with them?" He also asked Malak about this. But after listening to Evan, he too got confused because he too did not know what happened to those people. "There is definitely something fishy going in the world, Doman," Evan said inwardly and left the bathroom. He wore a new set of clothes and sat down on the giant comfy bed. "Let me inspect my wealth after a hard day's looting," he said, and looked inside his shadow storage. The moment Evan looked inside his shadow storage, his eyes started to shine like stars, because the first thing he saw was a small mountain of essence stones. "There are at least 4 million essence stones here," Evan said with drool trickling down from the corner of his mouth. "Too bad I need to return 50% of the things I stole from the treasure vault," Evan said in a low voice and thought about running away from there. But after a moment of thinking, he decided to stay there because his instincts were telling him that the thing that Mogul wanted to talk to him about was highly beneficial for him. Woo! Suddenly Evan heard a joyful voice and saw that Elijah was treating the mountain of essence stones as a slide and was playing on it like a child. Evan looked at Elijah for a few seconds and decided to ignore her. He did not want to comment anything about her childish behavior. Other than the essence stones, there were many different kinds of herbs, pills, potions, and artifacts as well. Evan ignored the herbs for the time being and looked at the pills and the potions first. He first took out a light golden colored pill, which was the largest in number among all the pills. Just as Evan took out the pill, its details appeared before his retina. Essence Condensing Pill, Rank 1 Low Grade. A pill that can help you turn your mana into world essence. "It can help me turn my mana into world essence." Evan's eyes sparkled a little when he saw the details of the pill, and he immediately used it. After taking the pill, it took Evan around 40 minutes to refine it. And when he checked its result, a deep frown appeared on his face. "This pill helped me turn 0.1% of my mana into the world essence. But the quality of this world essence is completely garbage," Evan said when he noticed the world essence created by the pill. Compared to his original world essence, the world essence created by the pill was at least 60% weaker. He looked at the essence condensing pills that were inside his shadow storage and noticed there were at least 30,000 of them. "There is no way I am going to use these pills to turn my mana into world essence," Evan said in a serious voice. After seeing the result of the pill, "Instead of using these pills to turn my mana into such a trashy world essence, I will just wait and use the Tower of Ascension to turn my mana into world essence." After deciding not to use the essence condensing pill, Evan looked at the next pill. The next pill was light blue in color, and there were just 6 of these pills. Source Pill. Using this pill after transforming all of your mana into world essence will allow you to evolve your core to the rank 1 stage. Evan raised an eyebrow when he read the details of the pill. "So this is the pill Clone was talking about in the dungeon, huh?" Evan muttered and looked at the source pill closely. Looks like Clone was telling the truth when he said source pills are extremely rare. Although I robbed the entire treasure vault of the Warlord gang, there are only 6 of these pills here. Although the source pill was very useful to the people who wanted to become a rank 1 core evolver, it was useless to Evan. The first requirement for using the source pill was to turn all of your mana into world essence, and Evan was far from turning all of his mana into world essence. Besides, even if I had turned all of my mana into world essence, I wouldn't have used this pill, Evan said, and placed the pills back into his shadow storage. The reason Evan said he wouldn't have used the source pill was because of his monarch core. Unlike normal people who possess only 1 core, he has 2 cores, and he is not sure what will happen if he uses the source pill to evolve his core. Instead of using pills, I will just use the Tower of Ascension and see what will happen with my cores, Evan thought inwardly, and took out a light green colored potion from his shadow storage. Tranquility Potion, rank 1 mid-level. Increase your comprehension speed of conceptual energy by 20%. Evan was stunned when he saw the details of the potion and looked at how many Tranquility Potions he had. There are just 3 of them. Evan furrowed his eyebrows when he saw the low numbers of the Tranquility Potions. I still have to return 50% of the things that I had stolen, but this potion, the Tranquility Potion, could help Evan increase the speed at which he was turning his world essence into conceptual energy of void. So he wanted to keep all 3 potions for himself. I will talk to Mogul about this potion tomorrow, Evan thought with a serious look on his face, and placed the Tranquility Potion back in his shadow storage. The next thing that Evan saw inside his shadow storage was a deep orange-colored stone, which was giving off a powerful aura. Evan took out the stone from his shadow storage, and noticed that the atmosphere around him became strange the moment he took out the stone. He furrowed his eyebrows when he noticed the strange change in atmosphere around him, and looked at the details of the orange-colored stone, and the moment Evan looked at the details of the stone, his eyes opened wide in shock. Chapter 653. Fire Domain Stone. An essence stone that absorbed a large amount of fire element energy, and gave birth to its own conceptual energy of fire, and created a mini domain inside it. By refining this stone, you can understand the mysteries of a domain, which can increase your chances of creating your own domain. A stone that can help people in creating their domain. Evan was stunned when he read the details of the Fire Domain Stone. According to information he got from Asher, who already created his domain, it takes people a long amount of time to create their domain. The first requirement to create a domain is to turn 25% of your world essence into conceptual energy. After turning 25% of your world essence into a conceptual energy, you have to work for a long time to create a domain using your understanding of conceptual energy. But the stone in front of him has a small fire domain inside it that can help him shorten the time he needs to create a domain. Although the domain inside the stone is related to the fire energy, and the domain Evan wants to create is the domain from void energy, this stone will still help him understand the mysteries of the domain if he refines it. Evan looked inside his shadow storage and saw there were no more domain stones inside it. There is just 1 domain stone. Evan furrowed his eyebrows when he saw this, and scratched the back of his head. He wanted to keep this domain stone for himself as well, but he wasn't sure how Mogul would react to this. Now I am feeling like I should really run away from here, Evan thought inwardly, but he soon shook his head. Mogul said that if I accept his deal, I can get the 50% items from the treasure vault of the other 3 clans as well. If it is true, then running away is definitely not a good idea, Evan muttered in a low voice, and looked at the other things that were inside his shadow storage. Essence Recovery Potion, rank 1 high level. A high-level world essence recovery potion that can help you recover 20% of your world essence immediately. There are different ranks of potions, and each rank is divided into 3 levels. Low level, mid-level, high level. Although the world domain is filled with rich resources, there are very few rank 2 items here, so the rank 1 high-level potions can be said to be the highest grade of potions that can be produced here. There are around 50 high-level and 176 mid-level essence recovery potions here, Evan said to himself, and divided them into 2 parts, so that he could return 50% of them to Mogul. Other than the rank 1 essence recovery potion, There were rank 1 high-level stamina recovery and healing potions as well. Just like the essence recovery potion, Evan divided those potions into 2 parts as well. Suddenly Evan's eyes fell on a dark red pill which was carefully kept inside a wooden box. Evan took out the pill and looked at its details. Orc Lord's ability bead. An ability bead that contains a full power attack of the Orc Lord Mogul. An ability bead, huh? Evan muttered in a low voice when he saw it was actually an ability bead. Although I'm strong, this bead can still come in handy, because I just have to pour a little bit of energy inside it to launch a full-scale attack of a peak rank 1 core revolver. Evan placed the ability bead back into his shadow storage, and looked at the other things. Blood Essence Pill, rank 1 mid-level. A pill that contains a large amount of blood essence of a peak rank 1 core revolver. After taking this pill you can greatly increase your power for a short period of time. Once the effect of the pill ends, the body of the user will enter in a weakened state, and there is a small chance that their innate potential will drop after using this pill. Evan narrowed his eyes when he read the details of the pill. Although this pill could save the life of its user during a dangerous situation, the side effects of this pill were quite big, especially the side effect of losing their innate potential. If a person has the potential to become a rank 2 core revolver, they might be stuck to rank 1 for the rest of their life because of using this pill. I should avoid getting myself in a situation where I need to use such a shabby pill to save my life, Evan said inwardly, and placed the pill back into his shadow storage. After putting back the pill, he noticed he had already looked at most of the pills and potions. Seeing there were no more pills and potions, Evan looked at the weapons. Orcs are really brute fighters. I was hoping to find a good accessory type artifact, but all of these are just brute weapons, Evan said to himself when he saw most of the weapons he robbed were useless for him, and decided to equip his shadow undeads with them. Suddenly, he noticed a purple-colored bow among the weapons. Evan raised an eyebrow when he noticed the bow, because he could feel a powerful aura coming out from the bow. Lightning Bow, rank 1 mid-grade. A bow made from the nether bark thunderwood. By pouring your energy into the bow, you can create arrows made from the conceptual energy of lightning, and shoot down your enemies. The description of the bow was very simple, but Evan was quite stunned when he read the details of the bow. According to the description, I just have to pour my energy into it to create an arrow made from the conceptual energy of lightning, he muttered in a low voice. Since I just need to pour my energy into it, then doesn't it mean I can use this bow, even though I don't have much of the world essence, because, after all, my mana is also a type of energy. According to what Evan knows, if you want to use a rank 1 weapon to their full potential, you need to use world essence while using them. But the lightning bow is completely different because he can use it without much difficulty, even though he doesn't have much world essence inside his core. I will try to keep this bow for myself, Evan said after reading the details of the bow, and put it back into his shadow storage. There was some material and other things as well, but Evan had no knowledge about them, so he did not waste his time looking at them. After the lightning bow, Evan did not find anything noteworthy, so he decided to sleep. Before sleeping, he summoned Asher and asked him to stand on guard for him. Evan was exhausted because of so many events that happened in a single day, so he quickly fell asleep. Early the next morning, Jirok, the rank 1 orc who met Evan and Malak in the stone room, came and told Evan that Mogul was ready to meet him. Chapter 654. Jirok led Evan to one of the inner rooms of the castle. When Evan entered the room, he saw Mogul sitting on a chair. Evan was honestly surprised when he saw Mogul sitting on a normal-looking chair, because he thought that Jirok would lead him to a throne room, where Mogul would be sitting on an imposing-looking throne decorated with human skulls. It seems like things like this only happen in novels, Evan thought inwardly when he saw Mogul sitting on a normal-looking chair. Jirok did not enter the room with Evan and closed the door after he went inside. Sit. Once Jirok closed the door, Mogul said to Evan. Evan didn't decline him and sat down on an empty chair with a relaxed look on his face. Aren't you afraid I would kill you now that we are alone? Mogul asked Evan in a curious voice when he saw his relaxed look. When Evan heard Mogul, he couldn't help but look at him weirdly. Somebody tell this guy that there are 4,000 bloodthirsty shadow undeads waiting in my shadow storage, ready to pounce on him at any time, Evan thought inwardly. But he did not say it out loud. He shrugged his shoulders when he saw Mogul was still looking at him and said in a calm voice, I am not afraid because I trust that an honorable warrior like you won't try to pull a trick against a weakling like me. Mogul's mouth couldn't help but twitch when he heard Evan. If you are a weakling, then what are the people of my gang, he said to himself, as he thought about how Evan killed 3 of his rank 1 core revolvers. Grunk, the guardian of the treasure vault and the one who was sucked inside the void. So what is the deal you were talking about? Evan didn't care about Mogul's twitching mouth and asked. Mogul took a deep breath when he heard Evan and his expressions turned serious. Since you killed Grunk and targeted our gang, I assume that Grunk must have tried to make things difficult for you when he found out that you just arrived in the world domain, right? Evan raised an eyebrow when he heard Mogul, but he still nodded his head. Although you are not completely right, you can put it that way. Although Mogul didn't understand what Evan meant by he was not completely right, he didn't think too much about it, and continued to speak. You know that the 4 great clans force people who come here to the world domain to sign a contract with them. Do you know why? Evan narrowed his eyes when he heard Mogul and shook his head. It was still a complete mystery to him as to why the people of the 4 great clans were forcing people to sign a contract with them, and what happened to those people once they signed a contract with them. In Grunk's memories, Evan saw that many people had signed a contract with the Warlord gang, but in the castle, Evan didn't see any of them. He was still curious as to what happened to those people. When Grunk saw Evan shaking his head after hearing his question, he sighed lightly and said in a bitter voice, all the 4 great clans force people to sign a contract with them, because we need their help. You need help? Evan asked in a confused voice. Yes, around 30% of the people who sign a contract with us are sent to guard the gates of the Tower of Ascension, so that they can stop people from using the tower and force them to sign a contract with us, and the remaining 70% people are sent to a place to clear a dungeon. Evan furrowed his eyebrows when he heard Mogul. He already knew about the people who guard the gates of the Tower of Ascension, but it was the first time he heard about the dungeon. What kind of dungeon is this that requires so many people? Mogul sighed when he heard Evan's question, and he said in a bitter voice, you know that people of the 4 great clans can't use the Tower of Ascension because of the restrictions of the world domain, right? Evan nodded his head when he heard Mogul because he already knew about this after seeing Grunk's memories. Seeing Evan nodding his head, Mogul paused and said after a moment, this dungeon can actually allow people from the 4 great clans to use the Tower of Ascension. According to the ancient records, if we successfully clear this dungeon, we will receive a reward that can help us break free from the restrictions of the world domain. Evan remained silent after hearing Mogul and fell into deep thoughts. After a moment, he looked back at Mogul and asked, what is the rank of this dungeon? It is a rank 1 dungeon. A confused expression appeared on Evan's face when he heard Mogul. If it is a rank 1 dungeon and it is so useful for you, then why don't you go and clear it yourself? You are already at the peak of rank 1. So I don't think it will be difficult for you to clear this dungeon with the help of some of your gang members. Mogul shook his head when he heard Evan and said in a frustrated voice, although it is a rank 1 dungeon, it is a little different than the normal dungeons. Unlike normal dungeons where you can enter as long as your rank is not higher than the dungeon, this dungeon is completely different, and only S rankers can enter in it. Evan was stunned when he heard Mogul and finally understood what was happening. Seeing the stunned expression on Evan's face, Mogul once again sighed and said, for years, we have been sending large numbers of S-rank people to clear this dungeon. But even with the help of so many S-ranker, we still can't clear this dungeon. Evan fell silent when he heard Mogul and looked at him silently. After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth and asked him, so you want me to clear this dungeon for you, right? Mogul did not deny Evan's words and nodded his head. Yes, if you help us clear this dungeon, I can guarantee that the other 3 clans will also allow you to take 50% of things from their treasury without any problem. Chapter 655. After his conversation with Mogul, Evan returned to the room where he stayed last night. After coming back to his room, he slumped down on the bed and looked at the ceiling of the room with a pondering look on his face. Mogul said he will invite the leaders of the other 3 clans this afternoon. Should I ask them for some extra benefits? He muttered to himself while looking at the ceiling of the room. After hearing Mogul's request, Evan agreed to help them because there was no reason for him to decline. After seeing things like Domain Stone and Tranquility Potion, he was determined to collect as many of them as possible before leaving the world domain. and helping Mogul and others was the easiest way for him to get those things. Before Evan robbed the Warlord gang, he was thinking about robbing the other 3 clans as well. But after what happened when he robbed the Warlord gang, Evan changed his mind. Although he was powerful, the power of the 4 great clans was not weak either. If they decided to fight to the death against him, he was not sure he would be able to keep himself safe. The only reason he even thought about robbing them was because he had the Shadow Possession skill, which could help him face off against even the peak rank 1 core revolvers. But the problem is that the duration of the Shadow Possession skill is only 3 minutes. Once a serious fight broke out, and if he could not finish it in 3 minutes, his life would definitely be in great danger. Instead of taking unnecessary risks by going against them, I should just work with them to get some benefits, Evan muttered to himself and narrowed his eyes. Besides, he stood up from the bed and left the room. I have a faint feeling that I will be able to get something good from this dungeon. After leaving his room, Evan went to look for Malak. But when he saw him after leaving his room, Evan was stunned because he noticed dark black circles under Malak's eyes. Instead of a middle-aged man, Malak was looking like a middle-aged panda cub. What happened to you? Evan asked him with a weird look on his face after seeing his appearance. Hearing Evan, Malak looked at him and said without blinking his eyes, I heard that some of the orcs like to eat humans. I was afraid that they would turn me into a fried human, so I wasn't able to sleep all night. Evan was lost for words when he heard Malak and didn't know what to say. In the end, he took out a storage ring and gave it to Malak. I need to go somewhere with Mogul for a few days, so you should return back to the city for the time being. Malak blinked his panda-like eyes a few times when he heard Evan and looked inside the storage ring. But the moment he looked inside the storage ring, the black circles under his eyes immediately disappeared, and his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. What the? He looked at Evan and opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out of it. If you think it's too much, I can take back half of it, Evan said in a calm voice when he saw the shocked look on Malak's face. Malak took a deep breath when he heard Evan and asked in a barely audible voice, why? Did you say something? Malak suddenly stood up and asked Evan in a high-pitched voice, why are there only 100 essence stones? Since you plundered the entire treasury, you must have gotten at least a few million essence stones. Aren't you ashamed of giving me only 100 essence stones? 100 essence stones. Evan blinked in surprise when he heard Malak and suddenly thought about something. He looked back into his shadow storage and took out another storage ring. It seems like I gave you the wrong storage ring, he said and gave another storage ring to Malak. The previous storage ring is for the waiter guy I threw under the bus yesterday. Give it to him for me when you return. Malak's mouth couldn't help but twitch when he heard Evan and thought about what Evan had done with the poor waiter yesterday. Well, by working at that cafe, that waiter can earn a maximum of 2 essence stones per day. So giving him 100 stones is equivalent to giving him the salary of 50 days of his work. Malak thought inwardly, and looked inside the second storage ring. I am sure that guy will definitely forget about what Evan did to him once he receives these 100 essence stones. After taking a look inside the second storage ring, Malak was once again shocked. There are nearly 50,000 essence stones here, he thought inwardly and looked at the other things. Seeing the other things that Evan gave him were essence condensing pills and 1 source pill, Malak looked at him with tearful eyes. Evan didn't care much for the things he had given Malak, and returned to his room soon after. After returning to his room, Evan sat down on the bed and took deep breaths to calm his mind. Once his mind calmed down, he took out a tranquility potion from his shadow storage and drank it. Tranquility Potion, rank 1 mid-level. This potion can increase your comprehension speed of conceptual energy by 20% for 3 hours. After drinking the Tranquility Potion, Evan immediately activated the Void Study skill of his Boots of Voyager. He had already evolved his Boot of Voyager into an S-rank artifact a few months ago, and now he could use the Void Study skill for 15 minutes a day, instead of the previous 10 minutes. Evan was expecting to receive a new skill after upgrading his Boots of Voyager, but other than the time of Void Study skill, nothing much changed about the boots even after he evolved them into full S-rank artifact. When Evan activated the Void Study skill, he immediately felt the effect of the Tranquility Potion, and noticed that he could perceive the void energy more clearly. After 3 minutes, Evan ran out of spiritual energy, and was forced to stop the void study skill. After stopping, Evan slumped down on the bed and panted heavily. Although he was completely exhausted, there was a bright expression on Evan's face. The effect of Tranquility Potion is better than I thought. He muttered to himself while panting. I will try my best to collect as many of them as possible before leaving from here. After a moment of rest, Evan drank a potion to recover his spiritual energy, and once again used the Void Study skill. Under the effect of the Tranquility Potion, Evan's understanding of the void energy grew at a rapid speed. Time continued to pass, and after a few hours, someone knocked on Evan's door and informed him that leaders of the other 3 clans have arrived there. Chapter 656. Evan stood in front of the room where he had talked to Mogul this morning. When he entered the room, he saw that apart from Mogul, there were 3 more people there. The 3 other people were naturally the leaders of the 3 other great clans. The leader of the Frostfall Alliance was a man who was looking in his mid-50s. He was around 180 centimeters tall and had light brown hair and black eyes. His name was Edward, and on a closer look, Evan noticed that his aura was slightly stronger than Mogul. The leader of the Moon Spider Nest was a mature-looking beautiful woman named Illumi. Illumi had light pink hair, deep purple eyes, and she was wearing quite revealing clothes. Although Illumi was looking like a seductive woman, she was actually a spider monster who took a human form. Although both Edward and Illumi were impressive in their own ways, the person who caught Evan's attention most was the leader of the Phantom World. The leader of the Phantom World was actually a cat woman named Noir. She had long black hair and deep yellow eyes. But of course, the things that stood out the most were her cat's ears and tail. Even though Evan was surprised after seeing a cat woman for the first time, the reason she caught his attention was not because of her look, but because of her powerful spiritual energy. That was very similar to Hana. Maybe Hana is somehow related to them, Evan thought inwardly as he sat down on an empty chair right beside Mogul. Just like how Evan was inspecting them, the 3 leaders of the clans were also inspecting him. And although it was hard for them to believe it, all 3 of them were quite stunned, as their intuition told them that the S-ranker in front of them was not weak. In the eyes of rank 1 core evolvers, all the S-rankers are nothing but cannon fodders. So the fact that their instincts told them Evan was strong was proof that he wasn't a normal S-ranker. Interesting, Edward said after Evan sat down. I honestly thought that this piggy was just spouting nonsense when he contacted me earlier. But it seems he is not completely wrong. Noir and Illumi also nodded their heads because they also thought that Mogul was just spouting nonsense when he contacted them earlier. Since we can sense that he is powerful, then let's stop beating around the bush and discuss the details immediately, because I have to get back ASAP and take care of some important things, Noir said in a flat voice when she felt Evan's spiritual power. You lazy cat, I know you just want to sleep after going back. Can't you be a little more serious? The future of your clan depends on this discussion. Try to behave like a leader at least once, Illumi said in a voice full of disdain when she heard Noir. Noir completely ignored what Illumi said and looked at Evan to discuss the details. But when she looked at him, she was surprised because she noticed Evan was looking at her with a stunned look on his face. What? She asked when she saw his surprised look. You didn't end your sentence with Naya, Evan asked in a stunned voice. What Naya? I mean, Naya. Naya? Yes, Naya. The room became oddly silent, and everyone looked at Evan with confused looks on their faces. When Evan noticed how everyone was looking at him, he finally realized what he was doing and felt a little embarrassed. Damn, I completely forgot that cat women end their sentences with Naya only in novels. He thought inwardly and coughed lightly. I was just talking to myself, but I think this NEK asterisk I mean leader Noir is right. We should quickly finish this discussion so that I can leave for the dungeon. All 4 leaders looked at Evan strangely and felt something was not right with his mind, but they also didn't want to stretch the discussion for no reason, so they didn't say anything about it. Mogul said you want 50% of items from my treasury in return, right? Edward asked after a moment. Yes, Evan nodded with a firm look on his face, and was ready for a tough negotiation, but I don't have any problem with that. If you can really clear that dungeon, then you are welcome to take 50% items from my Frostfall Alliance treasury. I also don't have any problem. Me either. Evan was stunned when Edward and others agreed without trying to negotiate with him. Seeing the stunned look on Evan's face, Illumi chuckled and asked, "Were you expecting us to bargain with you?" "Well, yeah," Evan didn't deny Illumi's words and said. Edward shook his head when he heard Evan and said in a bitter voice, "What is the point of keeping those things in the treasury when they are useless to us?" Evan raised an eyebrow when he heard Edward, but soon he understood what he meant. Edward and others were already at peak of the rank 1, and could not improve any further, because of the restrictions of the world domain. So even though the things that were in their treasury were valuable, they were completely useless to them, because they couldn't help them break free from the restrictions of the world domain. If you can really help us, then giving you the 50% of those things is not much of a big deal, Mogul also said when he heard Edward. I prepared so many negotiation lines just to convenience them, but Evan sighed inwardly and looked at Mogul. Since that is the case, take out the soul contract you were talking about. I have already prepared them because I know they would agree without any hesitation, Mogul said, and took out 3 golden-colored papers from his storage ring. Evan read the terms on the soul contract, and once he confirmed that there was no problem with them, he stamped them with a drop of his blood. The 3 leaders of the great clans did the same, and after confirming there was no problem with the contract, they also stamped them with a drop of their blood. The moment they stamped the soul contract with the drop of their blood, all 3 soul contracts disappeared, and Evan felt a binding force engulfing his soul. He already knew how the soul contract works, so Evan did not think too much about the binding force that he felt. Just wait for a few hours. I need to finish a few matters here. Once I take care of them, I will guide you to the location of the dungeon, Mogul said once the contracts were signed. Since everything is finished here, I will be taking my leave, Noir said once she signed the contract and stood up. Leader Noir, there is something I want to ask you. Can we talk for a moment? Seeing Noir was leaving, Evan stood up and asked, "You don't want to talk about that Naya thing, right?" "Of course, and I mean, of course not." When Noir heard Evan, she looked at him with a doubtful look on her face, but eventually nodded her head. Seeing the doubtful look on her face, Evan sighed and shook his head. "Man, I seriously need to stop thinking about this Naya thing," he thought inwardly and left the room along with Noir. Chapter 657. "So what do you want to talk about?" Noir asked Evan once they left the room where Mogul and the others were. Evan didn't reply to her. Instead, he used shadow senses and called out Hana from his shadow storage. The moment Hana came out of Evan's shadow storage, Noir stopped walking and looked at her with a frown on her face. But the frown on her face was soon replaced by a shocked look. "This familiar aura," Noir muttered in a shocked voice while looking at Hana. Looking at the way Noir reacted after seeing Hana, Evan narrowed his eyes. From her reaction, I can confirm that Hana is definitely related to her somehow, Evan thought inwardly, as he watched Noir looking at Hana with a shocked look. After a moment, Noir tried to pick up Hana from the ground, but when Hana saw this, she immediately jumped away from her and climbed up on Evan's shoulder. What have you done to Claire?" Noir asked Evan in a furious voice when she saw what just happened. "Claire?" Evan raised an eyebrow when he heard Noir and pointed at Hana. "You mean her name is Claire? She suddenly disappeared 2 years ago, so you were the one who took her away?" Noir didn't answer Evan and looked at him with rage-filled eyes. Oi, hold your horses. I was not even in the world domain to quote. "Return Claire to me." Noir suddenly jumped toward Evan and tried to take away Hana, while slashing at him with her sharp cat-like claws. Seeing her sharp claws, Evan used his high agility and quickly dodged her attack. I mean Leader Noir, can you listen to me before you do anything? Evan tried to explain to Noir after dogging her attack, but Noir didn't give him any chance and jumped towards him once again. Damn, why is this cat so unreasonable? Evan cursed inwardly and barely dodged another of Noir's attacks. Although Evan's agility was very high and he was even wearing boots of Voyager, it was still not easy for him to dodge Noir's attack, who was very agile. "I can't fight her seriously. Otherwise this entire castle will be destroyed and the lives of most of the S-rank orcs will be in danger. If that happens, I am sure Mogul will also try to kill me, no matter what Evan thought, and tried to think of a way to get out of this situation. Suddenly, Evan looked at Hana, who was still glued on his right shoulder, and was treating him like a roller coaster ride. This rascal quote black lines appeared on Evan's forehead when he saw Hana was enjoying herself, while he was trying to save his life. Since she is related to you, then you should be the one solving this mess. Evan suddenly grabbed Hana and threw her towards Noir. Mew. Hana mewed loudly in fright when Evan threw her towards Noir and tried to balance herself in midair. Claire. But before she could balance herself, she was caught by Noir. Mew. Hana used her claws and tried to break free from Noir's clutches, but she couldn't do anything against her. What happened to you? Why aren't you in your human form? And why has your rank dropped from the peak of rank 1 to S? Noir threw a barrage of questions at Hana after catching her. Evan was completely stunned when he heard the questions that Noir asked Hana. What the hell is she talking about? Evan muttered inwardly when he heard Noir's questions. Hana was just a B rank monster when I met her, but from what she is saying it seems like there is something wrong here. Hana didn't answer Noir's question when she heard her and tried to get away from her. I see, this guy must have done something to you, due to which you have become like this, Noir suddenly said and looked at Evan with cold eyes. Hey, enough of your bullshit. Don't think you can say whatever you want just because you have a mouth, Evan said in a frustrated voice when he heard Noir. Don't worry, Claire, I will take revenge for you and free you from his clutches. She is not listening at all. Evan's mouth couldn't help but twitch when Noir completely ignored what he just said. Mew. Suddenly, Hana broke free from Noir and jumped away from her. After jumping away, Hana looked at Noir with cold eyes, like literally saying, stay away from me. Claire. Noir was shocked when she noticed Hana's cold gaze, and looked at her in disbelief. From her reaction, it seems like her relationship with Hana is not normal, Evan thought inwardly, when he saw the shocked look on Noir's face upon receiving Hana's cold response. Why are you acting like this? Don't you recognize me? Noir asked while taking a step towards Hana. Mew. But Hana reacted just like before and waved her paws like shooing her away. If I want her to listen to me, I should first solve this problem for her, Evan said to himself and cleared his throat. Hana, she has no ill intentions towards you, so just play with her a little. Hana looked back at Evan when she heard him, and showed an expression that was saying don't wanna. When Evan saw Hana's expression, he did not say anything out loud, and used his shadow senses to talk to her. If you don't want me to hang you upside down for a whole day, then just play with her for a bit. All the hairs on Hana's body stood up when she heard Evan, and without delaying even for a second, she immediately jumped into Noir's arms, who had already dropped to her knees, after seeing Hana's cold reaction towards her. Are you willing to listen to me now? Evan asked once Hana jumped into Noir's arms. Noir rubbed Hana's head for a few seconds, and finally looked at Evan. Although she was not looking at him coldly like before, he could tell that she was still hostile towards him. Speak, what have you done to my Claire? Why are you so sure that I have done something to her? Evan asked Noir with a helpless look on his face. There is no way Claire would have forgotten about me if you hadn't done something to her, Noir replied to Evan in a voice filled with certainty. Well, I don't know what you are talking about, but here is what happened, Evan said, and told her everything about how he met Hana in the wilderness of Astart City. At first, Noir's expressions were pretty normal, but the more she heard what Evan was saying, the more shocked her expression became. In the end, when Evan finished telling her everything, Noir's entire body began to tremble. You are lying, she suddenly shouted. Claire is the native of World Domain and can't leave from here. Do you expect me to believe that you met her in your world? After saying this, she looked at Hana and continued to speak. On top of that, you are saying she was just a B rank monster when you met her. Don't try to mess with me. Claire was at the peak of rank 1 2 years ago when she suddenly disappeared. Do you think you can fool me with your fake story? Evan furrowed his eyebrows when he heard Noir. If what you are saying is true, then let me ask you something, Evan said and pointed at Hana. Are you sure she is Claire you are talking about? Isn't it possible that you are mistaken? Noir sneered when she heard Evan. Claire and I have grown up together since childhood. She was like a sister to me. Do you think I wouldn't be able to recognize her aura? Evan didn't say anything hearing Noir, and just looked at Hana with a pondering look on his face. Suddenly, Noir thought about something and looked back at Evan. You just said that cat monster tried to kill you, but died because of some unknown reason. Yes, Evan nodded his head because he still wasn't sure how Hana died at that time. If that cat monster died, then who is she? She looked back at Hana and asked. During all this time she was so shocked after seeing Hana that she did not care about her unusual appearance. But now that she looked at her closely, she was finally able to tell that there was something wrong with Hana. Evan already expected Noir to ask this question, so he didn't hide the truth from her. She is an undead. Noir's eyes opened wide when she heard Evan and her body started to shake. She looked at Hana who was sitting on her lap, and finally noticed the unusual aura around her. An undead, she muttered in a trembling voice, and tried to calm down her chaotic mind. I don't know if Hana is the Claire you are talking about or not, but everything I told you before was true. Besides, he said and patted Hana's head. The undeads I create using my skill are special because they retain all of their memories, and don't lose their ego even after becoming undead. Since Hana doesn't recognize you, it means that even when she was alive, she had no memories about you. Are you sure she is an undead? Noir asked in a shaking voice. Evan sighed when he heard Noir, and summoned a few more shadow undeads from his shadow storage. Seeing more of the shadow undeads, Noir was convinced that Hana was an undead. From her earlier behavior, I can tell that she was quite close with Claire, Evan said inwardly, after he showed his shadow undeads to Noir. I just hope that she won't start attacking me once again, after knowing I turned her friend into a shadow undead. Evan was expecting Noir to be angry after learning that he had turned Hana into an undead, but contrary to his expectations, Noir sighed in relief after hearing him, and a relieved expression appeared on her face. What the F***K with this sudden change in mood? Evan couldn't help but blurt out loud when he saw a relieved look on Noir's face. I don't know what is going on here, and why her aura is similar to Claire's. But if she is an undead, then there is no way she is my Claire, because Claire is still alive. What the Evan was stunned when he heard Noir, and he looked at her with a weird look on his face. Seeing the way Evan was looking at her, Noir patted Hana's head and said in a calm voice, we have an artifact called Soul Lamp. As long as a person mark it with their spiritual power, it can tell whether that person is alive or not. Claire also marked the Soul Lamp with her spiritual power, and according to the Soul Lamp, she is still alive, so there is no way this undead is my Claire. But just a moment ago you were saying you would never mistake Claire's aura, and was shouting she is definitely Claire quote. Evan stopped midway when he saw how Noir was looking at him. I am honestly confused, Noir said once Evan stopped speaking. I am still sure that her aura is completely similar to Claire, and she is somehow related to her, but how are both of them related and what happened to her? I can't be sure about that. Evan fell silent upon hearing Noir. He thought about everything and said after a moment, I think all of these things are somehow related to the Tower of Ascension. Noir immediately shook her head when she heard Evan. Claire was a native of the world domain, so she could not even go close to the Tower of Ascension. So I don't think this matter is related to the Tower of Ascension. Actually, something strange happened when I first arrived at the world domain yesterday, Evan said when he heard Noir, and told her about the gaze he felt after arriving at the world domain, and how Hana was behaving oddly at that time. Noir narrowed her eyes when she heard Evan. Saying that, Evan nodded his head when he saw Noir's narrowed eyes. I think the sprite of the Tower of Ascension is somehow involved in this matter. Chapter 658. When Malak told Evan that the people of the world domain could reach the peak of rank 1 at most, he did not think too much about it, and believed in him. But later when he thought about the gaze he had felt after arriving in world domain, he became doubtful whether Malak was right or not. Although he was still an S ranker, Evan was sure that no rank 1 core evolver could see his shadow undeads unless they came out of his shadow storage. But the person who gazed at him when he arrived in the world domain was clearly looking at Hana, who was inside his shadow storage. Evan was confused about the identity of this person, and it was also one of the reasons he decided to use Soul Search skill on Grunk. hoping that he would have some information about this matter, since he was a rank 1 core evolver. When Evan used the soul search skill on Grunk, he found that Malak was right, and the people of the world domain could reach the peak of rank 1 at most. Although there are no core evolvers in the world domain above the rank 1, there is actually someone who can kill the rank 1 core evolvers with just a single thought, and that someone is none other than the sprite of the Tower of Ascension. Through Grunk's memories, Evan came to know that the Tower of Ascension has its own sprite, and this sprite is the true ruler of the world domain. The sprite of the Tower of Ascension foresee the entire world domain, and make sure that everyone follows the rules of the world domain. If anyone breaks the rules of world domain, the sprite of Tower of Ascension has the authority to punish that person according to the rule he had broken. The sprite of the Tower of Ascension is also the reason why all the dead bodies of people turn into dust after their deaths. According to what Evan saw in Grunk's memories, the Tower of Ascension needs a large amount of energy to function. There are hundreds of cities in the world domain, and new people arrive there every day. Although the 4 great clans of the Eldoria city, the city where Evan is currently, don't allow most of the people who come here to use the Tower of Ascension, it doesn't mean the other cities are the same. Most of the cities in the world domain function normally, and the people who arrive in these cities use the Tower of Ascension every day. In order to turn S-rankers into a rank 1 core evolver and send them to Utopia, the Tower of Ascension uses a large amount of energy. Although the tower draws most of its energy from the world, the energy collected from all the dead bodies also plays a huge role in the working of the tower. Are you sure it was the sprite of the Tower of Ascension who was looking at Hana? Noir asked after hearing Evan. Other than the sprite of the Tower of Ascension, I don't think there is anyone in the world domain who can look at my undeads before I summon them outside, Evan replied in a calm voice when he heard Noir. Don't you have any method that allows you to communicate with the sprite of the Tower of Ascension? Noir didn't reply immediately when she heard Evan's question and fell into deep thought. After a full minute of silence, she looked back at Evan and nodded her head. All the great clans who rule over the cities have a way to communicate with the sprite of the Tower of Ascension, but unless it is absolutely necessary, we are not allowed to contact it. Evan wasn't sure about the problems of the world domain, so he didn't say anything when he heard Noir. It was completely up to her whether she wanted to talk to the sprite of the Tower of Ascension regarding this matter. Noir looked at Hana for a few seconds, and after some time, a resolute look appeared on her face. I will try to communicate with the sprite of the Tower of Ascension after going back. How confident are you that the sprite of the Tower of Ascension will answer your call? Evan asked when he heard Noir. The chances are not high, but I will try my best to find out what happened to Claire, Noir said while looking at Hana. Do you want to come with me? There are many good things in my clan that you will find interesting. She asked Hana, who was sitting on her lap. Is she trying to poach my undead in front of me? Evan thought inwardly when he heard Noir. Hana didn't reply to Noir and looked at Evan. In reality, she did not want to go, but she was afraid that if she refused she would be hanged upside down for a whole day. It is up to you whether you want to go or no. Quote. Even before Evan could finish speaking, Hana broke free from Noir and jumped on Evan's shoulder. Well, I guess poaching is unsuccessful, Evan muttered when Hana sat down on top of his shoulder. HMPH? She is definitely not my Claire. My Claire would have never refused to go with me, Noir said and turned around to leave. After turning around, she suddenly thought about something and threw something towards Evan. That dungeon is not easy, so don't die out there, she said and disappeared from there. Evan caught the thing that Noir threw towards him, and raised an eyebrow when he saw what it was. An ability bead hun, he muttered to himself and put it away in his shadow storage. Although I already have Mogul's ability bead, it doesn't hurt to have a few extra trump cards. Once Noir left, Evan also returned to his room and waited for Mogul. A few hours later, someone knocked on Evan's door and informed him that Mogul finished all the preparations for their departure, and was waiting for him. Chapter 659. I didn't see this guy last night, Mogul said as he looked at the giant bone dragon, who was enveloped in a cold aura of death. This guy is a bit lazy, so he was sleeping last night when we were fighting, Evan said in a casual tone, not bothering to tell Mogul that he had kept Nihilis in his shadow storage, just in case he needed his help. If Mogul had decided to continue their fight last night, Evan was planning to summon Nihilus's skeleton army to buy himself some time, so that he could escape from there. Oh, Mogul did not think too much about what Evan just said and sat down on top of Bone Dragon, along with Evan. Once Evan and Mogul sat down, the Bone Dragon flapped its giant bony wings, and flew in the direction of the dungeon, according to Mogul's guidance. What do you think? How many days it would take us to reach there if we flew at this speed? Evan asked Mogul after some time. Mogul pondered when he heard Evan and said after a moment, if we continue to fly at this speed, we should be able to reach our destination in a maximum of 4 days. 4 days, huh? Evan nodded his head hearing Mogul and thought to himself, the Bone Dragon doesn't need to replenish its stamina, so it can continuously fly for 4 days without any problem. We don't need to stop anywhere before reaching the dungeon, right? He asked because he wanted to finish this matter as soon as possible, and use the Tower of Ascension. If nothing goes wrong we won't need to stop anywhere, but the path to the dungeon is full of monsters, so if we encounter a powerful opponent we may have to stop, Mogul said when he heard Evan. Evan furrowed his eyebrows when he heard Mogul and summoned Asher from his shadow storage. Although Mogul had already seen Asher last night, he was still stunned when Evan summoned him, and he felt Asher's aura from up close. This guy is even stronger than me, Mogul thought inwardly when he felt Asher's aura. Asher, go ahead of us and clear the way so that we won't have to stop anywhere before reaching the dungeon, Evan said to Asher after summoning it. Asher bowed when he heard Evan's order and immediately flew away from there. Since he was a rank 1 core evolver, it was not hard for Asher to go ahead of the Bone Dragon. Once Asher left, Evan looked at Mogul and asked something that had been bothering him for quite some time. You said that if I clear the dungeon and get the clearing reward you guys would be able to use the Tower of Ascension through that reward, right? Yeah. Mogul nodded his head when he heard Evan's question. There are 4 great clans in the city of Eldoria, and the people of these clans are the native of the world domain. If I am not mistaken, there are hundreds of cities in the world domain, and each city has their own 4 great clans, made up of the native inhabitants of the world domain, Evan said, and he continued to speak. Similar to you guys, the people of those other clans can't leave the world domain as well, so the people of those clans must be trying to clear that dungeon as well. When Mogul heard Evan at this point, he could already guess what Evan wanted to ask, but he did not interrupt him, and let him finish speaking. If I clear this dungeon and get its reward, then doesn't it mean I will be targeted by people from other clans, and they will try to snatch that reward away from me? I can understand your worries that you don't want to become the target of other clans, but you don't have to worry about the other clans, quote, Mogul said in a calm voice and shook his head. The dungeon I am taking to you belongs to the city of Eldoria, which means only the 4 great clans of the Eldoria city can use its reward. When Evan heard Mogul he suddenly thought about something. Do you mean to say that each city has its own dungeon, and in order to use the Tower of Ascension, the 4 great clans from other cities must clear the dungeon that is located within their city's territory? Yes, Mogul nodded his head hearing Evan. The dungeon I am taking to you is no use to the great clans of the other cities, so you don't have to worry about them. So that's how it is, huh? Evan muttered in a low voice after hearing Mogul, and didn't ask anything else. The Bone Dragon continued to move in the direction of the dungeon, without reducing its speed. Because of Asher who was moving ahead of them, the Bone Dragon didn't encounter any monsters while going towards the dungeon. Soon, in the blink of an eye, 3 days passed and Evan and Mogul were just a few hours away from the dungeon. When they were just a few hours away from the dungeon, Evan suddenly received a message from Asher, and used his shadow senses. When he used his shadow senses and linked his vision to Asher, he saw a strange phenomenon occur in the distant sky. For some reason, the sky in that area turned rainbow-colored, and different kinds of lights were shooting in every direction. Roar, roar. Other than the phenomenon, Evan noticed that all the monsters who saw the phenomenon went crazy, and were rushing in its direction like hungry wolves. Although Evan was not present there by himself and saw everything through Asher's eyes, he could still tell that something interesting was happening there. It will take us around 1 hour to catch up with Asher, Evan thought inwardly and glanced at Mogul. Let's hope it will not end before we reach there. Chapter 660. Are you sure? Evan asked as he and Mogul flew towards Asher. If what you just said is true, then it is definitely a phenomenon that has arisen because of the birth of a rank 2 treasure, Mogul said in a voice filled with excitement, and used all of his strength to move forward as fast as possible. After Evan told Mogul about the phenomenon that he saw through Ash's eyes, Mogul immediately told him to move towards its direction. Although Evan wasn't sure what was the cause behind the phenomenon, from Mogul's expression, he could tell that it was definitely something important. So in order to reach there as soon as possible, Evan summoned Bone Dragon back into his shadow storage, and flew there by himself, along with Mogul. While flying, he asked Mogul about the phenomenon, and Mogul told him that in the world domain, whenever a rank 2 treasure is born, a phenomenon will occur. Most of the items in the world domain are of rank 1, so wherever a rank 2 item appears here, there will be a bloody fight between people to get that rank 2 item. I wonder what kind of rank 2 item it will be, Evan thought inwardly as he flew in the direction of phenomenon. Around 45 minutes later, Evan and Mogul finally saw Asher, who was looking at the phenomenon while hovering in mid-air. This is definitely a phenomenon that has arisen because of the birth of rank 2 treasures, Mogul said in a voice filled with certainty, when he saw the phenomenon with his own eyes. Let's go before anyone else takes it, Evan said when he heard Mogul and shot in the direction of the phenomenon. Don't be hasty, Mogul immediately caught hold of Evan when he saw him rushing towards the phenomenon, and said in a serious tone. Evan slowed down a bit when he heard Mogul's serious voice and looked at him with a questioning look on his face. I don't know what kind of treasure it is, but no one will be able to take it away until the phenomenon disappears, Mogul said when he saw the questioning look on Evan's face. From the looks of it, this phenomenon might have been going on for a few hours, and I am sure many rank 1 monsters might have already come here hiding in this area, so we should be careful, otherwise our lives will be in danger. Evan came back to his senses when he heard Mogul, and quickly used his spiritual senses to scan the surrounding area. Upon scanning the surrounding area, Evan was stunned because he immediately noticed around 5 rank 1 monsters who were hiding nearby, waiting for the phenomenon to over, so that they could snatch the treasure. Although these monsters are just at the beginning of rank 1, it would definitely be dangerous if I were to act carelessly. And they all attack me at the same time, Evan thought inwardly, and quickly concealed his aura. He also used his spiritual power to protect himself and Asher, so that no one would be able to notice them by using their spiritual senses. Mogul used his spiritual power as well and concealed his aura. After concealing themselves, Evan, Mogul and Asher moved forward, going closer to the site of the phenomenon. The closer Evan got to the phenomenon, the more shocked he became, because when he was just 1 kilometer away from the phenomenon, he noticed there were a total of 3 groups of monsters, who were hiding in the nearby area, and in those 3 groups, there were 10 rank 1 monsters. Among the 10 rank 1 monsters, 3 were at the peak of rank 1, and all 3 of them were the leaders of the groups that were hiding in the area, waiting for the phenomenon to end. The largest group among the 3 groups was that of a monster called Ground Rat. The peak rank 1 Ground Rat was around 3 meters tall, and sharp teeth were coming out from its rather small mouth. The rat was covered in thick dark brown fur, and earth element particles were moving around it, showing its high affinity with the earth element. In its group, other than itself, there were 3 other rank 1 and around 19s rank ground rats. The 2 other peak rank 1 monsters were Steel Monkey and Nether Crocodile respectively. In their groups, both of them had 2 rank 1 monsters and around 15s rank monsters. Because Evan's and Mogul's spiritual power was far higher than the monsters who were hiding there, no one was able to detect their presence when they arrived there. While hiding in nearby bushes and trees, Evan and Mogul continued to move forward, and soon they were just a couple of 100 meters away from the phenomenon. When they were just a couple of 100 meters away from the phenomenon, Evan and Mogul were finally able to see what was the thing that was causing the phenomenon. What is this? Evan asked Mogul using telepathy when he saw a small rainbow-colored fruit. But to Evan's surprise, Mogul shook his head when he heard his question, and said with a confused look on his face, I honestly don't know what is this. I have never seen this kind of fruit before. Evan glanced at Mogul from the corner of his eyes, wondering whether he was telling the truth or not. Mogul noticed Evan's gaze, but he did not comment on it. After a moment, Evan stopped looking at Mogul and asked another question. Do you have any idea how much time it will take for the phenomenon to disappear? Typically a rank 2 treasure phenomenon lasts between 6 hours to 10 hours. I don't know how long this phenomenon has been going on, so I can't be sure when it will end. Evan pondered for a moment hearing Mogul and said after some time, "Let's split up for the time being." Mogul didn't seem surprised when he heard Evan and nodded his head because he was thinking the same. In the world domain, the rank 2 items were very rare, and Mogul definitely wanted the rainbow-colored fruit for himself. Evan was the same, and he wanted the item for himself, so it was better for them to split up for the time being. "Don't die out there while trying to get that fruit," Evan said to Mogul before he moved away from there with Asher. Mogul didn't say anything and just shook his head when he heard Evan. Honestly, he knew that his chances of getting the fruits were not high, because, unlike others, he was completely alone. Although his chances were not high, Mogul still wanted to try nonetheless. Evan moved a few hundred meters away from Mogul, and found a good place for himself to wait for the phenomenon to end. I don't think Mogul was lying when he said he had never seen this fruit before, which means it is definitely a rare treasure. Evan thought inwardly and waited patiently. Time continued to pass, and around 4 hours later, the fruit started to shake. Evan narrowed his eyes when he noticed the change in the fruit. Whoosh! Suddenly, a powerful suction force erupted from the fruit, and it started to absorb the world essence from the surrounding area. "The fruit is about to mature," Evan said to himself when he saw this, and got ready to move on. Chapter 661. The rainbow-colored fruit suddenly turned into a black hole, and started to absorb all the world essence from the surrounding area. The speed at which the fruit was absorbing world essence was so fast that a small essence storm arose around the fruit, destroying everything in an area of (10 meters around the fruit. "Damn, even an S-ranker won't be able to survive in such a powerful essence storm," Evan thought inwardly, as the fruit continued to absorb the world essence. As the fruit absorbed the world essence, a sweet smell started to spread in the surrounding area. When Evan smelled the sweet smell of fruit, his mind became incredibly calm, and he felt as if he had just drank a high-level tranquility potion that could increase his comprehension abilities. "What the FU*K is this fruit?" Evan was shocked when he noticed what was happening. He couldn't believe that just the smell of the fruit was more effective than the tranquility potion. After smelling the fruit's sweet smell, although Evan wanted nothing more than to use void study skill to properly utilize its effects, he knew it was not the time for that, as the fruit was about to mature. Mogul and the monsters hiding in the surrounding area were also stunned after seeing the effect of the fruit, as they too had seen such fruit for the first time. "I need to get this fruit no matter what," Evan said inwardly, and summoned Kazal, Volak, and Eclipse. After summoning them, he used his spiritual power to cover them, so that no one would be able to notice them. Once Evan confirmed that no one noticed his 3 assassins, he gave them a simple order, and all 3 of them disappeared from there. After sending them away, Evan threw a small triangular-shaped thing amid the essence storm. Because of the dense world essence that was covering the area around the fruit, no one noticed the thing that Evan had thrown. About 15 minutes later, the world essence storm that arose around the fruit began to disappear, and the fruit also stopped absorbing more essence from the surroundings. "Get ready." Evan's expression turned serious when he noticed this, and he said to Asher. Mogul and others also noticed the change in the fruit, and their expressions also turned serious. Around 1 minute later, everything around the fruit calmed down, and the fruit shined in a bright rainbow-colored light. The moment the fruit shined in rainbow-colored light, the phenomenon that was covering the sky disappeared. Just as the phenomenon disappeared, Mogul, Ground Rat, Steel Monkey and Nether Crocodile were about to rush towards the fruit when suddenly, swish, Solsish, swish, Volak, Eclipse and Kazal appeared behind the groups of 3 monsters who were completely focused on the fruit, and instantly killed some of their S-rankers. The 3 groups of monsters were stunned when some of their group members died, and they looked at Volak and others in fury, as there were at least 3 rank 1 monsters in each group. It didn't take them even a second to kill Volak and others after they killed their S-rank monsters of their groups. But that small distraction was more than enough for Evan to take a huge lead. Unlike other monsters, Mogul immediately shot towards the fruit the moment the phenomenon disappeared. He wasn't worried about the attacks of the monsters, because he was wearing a rank 1 high-grade armor. That was enough to protect him from the attacks of other monsters. But before Mogul could reach the fruit, the small soul beacon that Evan had thrown earlier flashed, and Evan arrived in front of the fruit instantly. Evan didn't even take a proper look at the fruit after coming in front of it, and immediately threw it inside his shadow storage. After throwing the fruit inside his shadow storage, Evan did not wait even for a second, and bolted away from there. Row, 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 dash. When the monsters saw someone else had gotten the fruit, all of them roared in anger and locked down their aura on Evan, who was running away from there. If it was the aura of only 1 or 2 rank 1 monsters, Evan could have easily ignored its effect. But when the aura of 10 rank 1 monsters came pressing down on him at the same time, even he couldn't help but staggered a bit while running away. Asher, Evan quickly shouted when he felt the aura of so many rank 1 monsters locking down on him. Whoosh! The moment Evan shouted, the temperature of the surrounding area skyrocketed, and a large fireball came falling down from the sky onto the group of ground rats. Because of Asher's attack, the ground rats were forced to stop chasing after Evan. The auras of all the ground rats that were locking down on Evan disappeared, and his running speed once again increased. Come out! Evan's shadow shook a little once Asher stopped the ground rats, and his shadow army came out of his shadow storage. Seeing the sudden appearance of the thousands of enemies, the groups of steel monkeys and nether crocodiles were stunned. Although they were stunned, they didn't stop even for a bit and continued to chase after Evan. While chasing him, they used their most powerful attacks without holding back to get rid of shadow undeads. There were a total of 6 rank 1 monsters in both of the groups, and all 6 of them attacked without holding anything back. Holy sh*t, when Evan felt the powerful energy fluctuations coming from behind him, he couldn't help but scream out loud and tried his best to flee from there. In an instant, because of the attacks of 6 rank 1 monsters, all of the 4,000 shadow undeads that Evan had summoned were destroyed without being able to do anything. These ****ers are seriously thinking about fighting to death in order to get that fruit. Evan cursed when he noticed the monsters were not holding back in the slightest, and used a large amount of mana to summon back his shadow army once again. Asher was still busy holding back the group of ground rats, so he wasn't there. But just like before, the moment he summoned the shadow army, the 6 rank 1 monsters destroyed them instantly. Evan couldn't help but curse when his shadow army was once again destroyed, and he lost a large amount of mana. Although his shadow army was destroyed, Evan once again summoned them and continued to run away from there. In just a few minutes, he had already fled 500 kilometers away from the place where the rainbow-colored fruit ripened. But groups of steel monkeys and nether crocodiles were still pursuing him. Although 500 kilometers is not a long distance, it should be more than enough, Evan said inwardly, and sent a message to Asher to stop fighting against the ground rats. When Asher received Evan's message, he stopped fighting against the ground rats and ran away from there. Seeing Asher was running away, the ground rats did not chase after him, and rushed in the direction where Evan had fled. After sending the message to Asher, Evan summoned his shadow army one more time to slow down steel monkeys and nether crocodiles. But similar to last time, his army was once again destroyed by the rank 1 monsters, and Evan ran out of mana. Although Evan ran out of mana, his lips curved upwards because Asher just sent him a message telling him that the ground rats were coming after him. After knowing the ground rats were also coming here, Evan suddenly stopped running away, and looked back at the steel monkey and nether crocodile, who were rushing towards him with rage-filled eyes. Seeing their rage-filled eyes, Evan smirked and waved his hands in their direction. "See you losers," he said, and the shadow energy inside his body moved. The moment shadow energy inside his body moved, Evan disappeared from there. The steel monkey and the nether crocodile were stunned when Evan suddenly disappeared, and used their spiritual senses to look for him. But to their shock, they were not able to find Evan within the range of their spiritual senses. The soul beacon that Evan had thrown earlier near the rainbow fruit flashed, and Evan appeared there with a pale look on his face. After appearing there, he picked up the soul beacon and drank a full mana recovery potion to restore some of his mana. "Let's run away from here before those bastards come back," Evan muttered after drinking the potion, and quickly ran away from there. Chapter 662. Oi, don't just stand there and run, Evan said to Mogul while running away when he saw him standing at the same spot with a dazed look on his face. Earlier, all the monsters completely ignored Mogul, because all of them were focused on Evan. Hearing Evan, Mogul came out from his dazed state and quickly followed after him. Since the monsters were still searching for Evan at the place from where he disappeared, he and Mogul successfully escaped from there. Damn, I thought those monsters wouldn't go all out from the start, and will try to hold on to their strength until they got their hands on the fruit. But those bastards, Evan muttered once he and Mogul were far away from the monsters. Mogul shook his head when he heard Evan and said in a normal voice, "It is actually quite normal. You are new here, so you don't understand the true allure of a rank 2 treasure. A single rank 2 treasure can allow a normal rank 1 core evolver to turn into a true powerhouse. So it is obvious those monsters would try their best to get their hands on it no matter what." Evan didn't say anything when he heard Mogul and summon Bone Dragon from his shadow storage. Although only half an hour passed since the moment he stole the fruit, Evan was completely exhausted because of all the running and repeated summoning of his shadow undeads. After summoning the Bone Dragon, Evan and Mogul sat down on it, and it flew in the direction of the dungeon. If not because of the strange rules of the world domain that turns every dead body into dust, I would have definitely tried to kill some of the rank 1 monsters to get new powerful shadow undeads, Evan thought, once the Bone Dragon started to fly and took a deep breath. After taking a deep breath, he looked inside his shadow storage and took out the rainbow-colored fruit. When Evan took out the fruit, Mogul also looked at it with a curious expression on his face, because it was the first time that he had seen such a fruit. "Let's see what the hell it is," Evan muttered after taking out the fruit, and its details appeared before his retina. The Domain Breaker Fruit. A fruit that is filled with a large amount of world essence, and contains a small portion of world lore. Eating this fruit can help a person evolve their domain into the zone. Note: using the Domain Breaker Fruit, you can refine the Breaker Pill, which can increase the chances of evolving your domain into zone by another 30%. Holy sh*t, Evan couldn't help but curse after reading the details of the fruit. Mogul, who read the details, was also stunned and looked at the fruit with his eyes wide open. "This fruit is basically a cheat item that can help me become a rank 2 core evolver without any problem if I use it wisely," Evan said inwardly, and placed the fruit back into his shadow storage. Do you want to exchange dash? Sorry, it is not for sale." Mogul wanted to ask if Evan wanted to sell or exchange the fruit, but Evan had no intentions of doing so. He didn't let him finish his sentence. "What a joke. I am not far away from creating my domain. Once I create my domain, I will have to turn it into a zone to evolve my core to rank 2. There is no way I am going to sell something that will reduce the time that I needed to increase my rank," Evan thought inwardly and ignored Mogul. Mogul looked at Evan for a few seconds and sighed. If Evan was weaker than him, he would have definitely tried to take that fruit away from him. Although it was not certain, there was a small chance that the Domain Breaker Fruit could help him advance to rank 2, even though he was restricted by the laws of the world domain. The reason Mogul thought this was because of the details of the fruit. In the details of the fruit, it is written that it contains a small part of world lore. Maybe that small part of the lore can help me break free from the restrictions, Mogul said inwardly, and glanced at Evan from the corner of his eyes. Because of going towards the phenomenon and running away from the monsters, Evan and Mogul had gone further away from the way to the dungeon. The Bone Dragon had to fly for a few hours to return to the original route to the dungeon. Once the Bone Dragon returned to the original route, Evan once again sent Asher ahead of them, so that they wouldn't encounter any monsters. Time passed, and 4 hours later, when the sun was about to set, a small town-like establishment came into Evan's sight. "Is this the place?" Evan asked Mogul when he noticed the small town. "Yeah." Mogul nodded his head hearing Evan. "Most of the people who live here are here to clear the dungeon. Other than the people who signed the contract with us, many of the S-rankers of the 4 clans are also here. All of them have been trying to clear the dungeon for a long time, but no one has been able to clear the dungeon till now. Because of the difficulty of the dungeon, most of the people call this town the Dungeon Town." "Dungeon Town? Huh?" Evan muttered in a low voice as the Bone Dragon soon landed in front of the town gate. Seeing the giant Bone Dragon, most of the guards of the town were stunned, but they quickly calmed down when they noticed Mogul. Mogul told the guards to go back to their positions, and he entered the town along with Evan. "Do you want to go to the dungeon immediately or rest today?" Mogul asked Evan once they entered the town. Evan looked around the town and said after a moment, Let's go tomorrow morning. I'm still tired from what happened earlier. Mogul nodded his head hearing Evan and led him to the center of the town, where the most luxurious houses of the town were located. After settling Evan in the house, Mogul left saying that he had to take care of some matters. Once Mogul left, Evan did not go out to explore the town, because he was really tired due to the earlier events, and went to sleep. Chapter 663. The next day, Mogul led Evan outside of the dungeon town. The town was built around 100 kilometers away from the dungeon because of safety reasons. Although it is very rare, there have been some outbreaks in the dungeon in the past, which is why the town is built far away from the dungeon. When Evan reached the dungeon area, he saw that tens of S-rankers of a variety of races were gathered there. On a closer look, he noticed that all the people were in a group of at least 30 S-rankers. Just the fact that even the smallest group that entered the dungeon has 30 members shows how difficult this dungeon is, Evan thought, when he noticed the different groups of the hunters. Mogul was well known among the people because of his status as the leader of one of the 4 great clans, so most of the people were shocked when they saw him. Evan also attracted a lot of attention because he was walking next to him, and many people looked at him with curiosity. Evan didn't care about the look that the people were giving him and followed Mogul. After a few minutes of walking, he suddenly felt some powerful energy fluctuations and noticed a 3 meters wide dungeon portal. It was the first time Evan had seen a rank 1 dungeon portal, and he was quite surprised because the energy fluctuations that were coming out of the dungeon were far stronger than he thought they would be. Right above the dungeon portal was a small holographic screen showing different names and clear time in front of those names. According to the information Mogul gave me, this dungeon has 10 floors, and the holographic screen shows the names of the people who cleared the floors in the shortest amount of time, Evan said to himself when he noticed the holographic screen. / first floor. Time changes. 4h 36 and 9 seconds. / second floor. Team Iron. 9 hours. 54 minutes. 43 seconds. / third floor. Golden Lion. 18 hours. 4 minutes. 32 seconds. / fourth floor. / fifth floor. / sixth floor. Evan looked at a few names and noticed all of them had cleared the floors in a team. Most importantly, the columns from the 7th floor and onwards were empty, which means no one was able to clear the 7th floor after clearing the 6th floor. Although it has been hundreds of years, no one was able to clear the 7th floor and go to the 8th floor. Evan muttered inwardly after seeing the names on the holographic screen. When Mogul arrived near the portal, a rank 1 orc greeted him. Leader. The rank 1 orc kneeled in front of Mogul and said in a respectful voice, "Everything is ready. You can use the dungeon whenever you want." Mogul nodded his head hearing the rank 1 orc and looked at Evan. "Are you sure you don't need any teammates?" Evan just smiled when he heard Mogul and didn't say anything. Seeing Evan smile, Mogul just shook his head and didn't say anything because he already knew his answer. Is this guy trying to clear the dungeon alone? The rank 1 orc who was kneeling in front of Mogul was stunned when he heard them. Although he wanted to say that S-rankers couldn't clear the dungeon alone, he didn't dare to speak anything in front of Mogul. Evan obviously noticed how the orc was looking at him, but he didn't care. "Since everything is ready, I will be going in," he said to Mogul, and walked in front of the dungeon portal. "Remember that you can leave the dungeon at any time if you encounter danger," Mogul said to Evan when he saw him walking towards the portal. Evan nodded his head hearing Mogul and arrived in front of the dungeon. After arriving in front of the portal, he took a deep breath and stepped inside it. Although the difficulty is not easy, it should not be a problem for me to clear the 7th floor that people were not able to clear for such a long time, Evan said to himself and disappeared inside the portal. Once Evan went inside the dungeon, Mogul didn't leave immediately and looked at the holographic screen. The first floor is just a normal floor where you have to kill S-rank monsters to clear it, Mogul thought, while looking at the holographic screen. If the dungeon doesn't reduce his power and allows him to summon all of his monsters, then I think all the names on the holographic screen will change today. After looking at the screen for a few seconds, Mogul turned around. Well, even if he can summon his monsters, it will still take him a few days to clear the dungeon. he said, and went inside one of the cabins which was built near the dungeon. Around 10 minutes later, Mogul suddenly heard a commotion from the outside. When he heard the commotion, Mogul didn't leave his cabin, and just used his spiritual senses to look at the holographic screen. After looking at the holographic screen with his spiritual senses, Mogul sighed in relief and a smile appeared on his face. Looks like he can still summon his monsters inside the dungeon, he said, and looked at the holographic screen with a hopeful look on his face. Since he can summon his monsters, then he might really clear this dungeon. First floor, Evan, 9M, 14C, // Inside the dungeon, Evan watched as the bodies of tens of S-rank monsters turned into dust. I was worried that this dungeon, like the Inferno dungeon, would not allow my shadow undeads to enter. But it seems I worried for nothing, Evan said as he looked at the army of his shadow undeads, who slaughtered all the S-rank monsters of the first floor without any problem. Once all the bodies of the monsters turned into dust, a new portal that was leading to the second floor appeared in front of Evan. Evan walked ahead of his shadow undeads, and all of them followed behind him. I will try to clear the second floor in less than 1 hour, he muttered to himself, and entered the portal of the second floor, along with his shadow undeads. Chapter 664. Who the hell is this guy? He already replaced the names of the first 3 floors. Forget about replacing the names. It is not even 1 hour since he entered the dungeon, but he already cleared 3 floors. Does it even make sense? The atmosphere outside of the dungeon was quite chaotic, as people talked to each other with a look of disbelief on their faces. All of them had their eyes fixed on the holographic screen, and they were looking at it with a shocked look on their faces. Forget about the people, even Mogul was completely stunned, especially after seeing the time that Evan took to clear the 3rd floor. Just what the hell is going on inside? Mogul muttered with a dazed look as he looked at the holographic screen using his spiritual senses. / second floor, Evan, 38M, 21 sec, / 3rd floor, Evan, 3M, 19 sec, / The second floor of the dungeon was similar to the first floor. The only difference was that the second floor was much larger than the first floor, and the number of monsters Evan had to kill on the second floor were 3 times greater than the number of the monsters he had killed on the first floor. Although it was not easy, Evan still cleared the second floor in less than 40 minutes, creating a new record. The 3rd floor of the dungeon was very different from the first and the second floor. On the 3rd floor, Evan had to destroy a crystal within 24 hours. That was being guarded by the monsters in the center of a small town. The small town was filled with S-rank monsters, and there were different kinds of traps in the town. That made clearing this floor incredibly hard, even for an experienced team of S-rankers. Although Evan could have released his shadow undeads inside the town and tried to destroy the crystal with their help, he was too lazy to waste his time on this floor. The traps in the town were very hard to detect, and Evan was sure that even with the help of his shadow undeads, it would take him at least 2 hours to clear this floor, which is why he decided to use a different method, and that different method was to directly destroy the crystal without entering the town. Evan first thought about using Carnage to destroy the crystal from the distance, but noticed that the crystal was actually inside a castle, and he couldn't see it from the outside of the town. When he wasn't able to see the crystal, Evan simply used his most destructive area of attack skill, Thunder Tempest, along with the Soul Absorption skill, and destroyed the entire town in one go. Using the Thunder Tempest skill, Evan killed most of the monsters, and destroyed all the traps that were inside the town. Although the crystal wasn't destroyed by the Thunder Tempest skill, the castle where the crystal was located collapsed due to the lightning, and Evan was able to see the crystal from the distance. Once the castle collapsed and the crystal was revealed, Evan simply destroyed it using Carnage. Because of using Thunder Tempest skill that destroyed the entire town, Evan cleared the 3rd floor in less than 4 minutes. The moment the crystal was destroyed and Evan cleared the floor, the portal which led to the 4th floor appeared in front of Evan. When the portal appeared, Evan didn't go to the 4th floor immediately, and first drank a mana recovery potion. After drinking the potion, he rested on the 3rd floor and recovered all of his mana. Half an hour later, Evan's mana was completely restored, and he walked in front of the portal. The 4th floor will be completely different from the previous 3 floors, as rank 1 monsters will start appearing from now on, Evan muttered to himself and took a deep breath. According to the information, There will be a beginner level rank 1 monster on the 4th floor. Evan took a step forward and walked inside the portal. If everything that Mogul said about this floor is correct, then this floor will be a fun place. Upon reaching the 4th floor, Evan found himself standing on a small island located in the middle of a small lake. Evan was not surprised to see the small island as he already had the information about the 4th floor. After arriving on the island, Evan immediately used shadow wings and shot high into the sky. Once he was around 200 meters above the island, Evan stopped and looked at the small lake properly. The island, which was situated in the middle of the lake, was full of towering green trees, and there were no monsters on it. The water of the lake was crystal clear, and some small fish were swimming in it. If I had not known about this place, I would have definitely suspected this place to be a picnic spot, Evan muttered when he saw the calm atmosphere of the 4th floor. Although the atmosphere on the 4th floor was quite calm, this floor was actually a nightmare for many hunters. And the reason is that to clear this floor, you have to go inside the lake and kill all the monsters who are inside it, including the rank 1. Killing a rank 1 monster is already very difficult for S rankers, so killing it underwater is almost impossible for them. Moreover, before entering the lake, people can't even use their spiritual senses to see what is inside the lake, because there is a strange power that prevents people's spiritual senses from going inside the lake. The only reason people in the past were able to clear this floor was because of the ability bead that they used to kill the rank 1 monster underwater. But even with the help of the ability bead, it was not easy to kill the rank 1 monster, because this lake is filled with the S rank monsters, and before killing the rank 1 monster, people had to kill them. I also have the ability bead, but I don't need to use it to clear this floor, Evan muttered and looked into his shadow storage. After a while, he found what he was looking for and took out a bow from his shadow storage. Lightning bow, rank 1 mid-grade. A bow made from the nether bark thunderwood. By pouring your energy into the bow, you can create arrows made from the conceptual energy of lightning and shoot down your enemies. The combination of water and lightning is always interesting. He muttered and aimed down his bow towards the lake. I wonder how strong the power of this bow is. Evan began to pour his mana into the bow, and soon a purple arrow filled with lightning energy began to form in it. Although he could not use the full power of the bow because he was using mana, Evan did not care about it, and in just a few seconds poured all of his mana into it. Crackle! Because of the large amount of mana, the lightning arrow that formed into the bow turned dark purple in color. Feeling the powerful lightning energy coming out from the arrow, Evan smiled a little and released the string of the bow. The moment he released the string, a loud thundering sound echoed throughout the 4th floor, and the lightning arrow shot towards the lake. The arrow tore through the lake water and went deep inside it. For a few seconds, the lake remained calm even after the arrow went inside it. But after a few seconds, crackle! A crackling sound rang out, and the calm atmosphere of the 4th floor turned chaotic. Chapter 665. When the lightning arrow went inside the lake, nothing happened for the first few seconds. But after a few seconds, the water of the lake started becoming turbulent. Bubbles started to come out from all over the lake, and the next second, crackle! A crackling sound rang out throughout the area, and a storm of lightning engulfed the entire lake. Screams and roars of water monsters echoed out everywhere, and they started to jump out of the water, trying to escape from the assault of lightning. Although the monsters jumped out of the water, it was still useless, because their bodies were already covered in the conceptual energy of the lightning, and they were completely helpless against it. Within seconds, the bodies of S-rank monsters began floating above the lake, and a dense aura of death engulfed the 4th floor. But it did not last long, because all the dead bodies soon disappeared, and were absorbed by the Tower of Ascension. Although most of the S-rank monsters of the lake were dead, Evan didn't relax and looked all over the lake carefully. Although I know the rank 1 monster of the lake won't die just from the single arrow, it must have been seriously injured because of the lightning, Evan said to himself, and tried to look around to see if the rank 1 monster came out of the lake. But after looking around the area with his spiritual senses, he confirmed that the rank 1 monster did not come out from the water and was still inside. If I use another lightning arrow, I am sure this rank 1 monster will definitely come out. But in order to use the arrow, I will have to recover my mana first, Evan thought, and looked at the lake with a pondering look on his face. After thinking about it for some time, Evan took a deep breath. I just used a potion to recover my mana on the previous floor. If I want to recover my mana once again, I will have to wait for at least 1 hour, he said in a low voice, and dived inside the lake. Instead of waiting for 1 hour, I might as well kill the monster using a little bit of my shadow energy and enjoy myself on this floor. When Evan dived into the lake, he noticed that although the sun was shining brightly outside, the lake was completely dark from the inside. Even though there was no light inside the lake, Evan didn't care about it, because he could easily see in the darkness without any problem. Now that I am inside the lake, I should be able to use my spiritual senses to look for the rank 1 monster, Evan thought inwardly, and his powerful spiritual senses covered the entire lake. Found it in less than 3 seconds. He found a rank 1 monster who was hiding at the bottom of the lake. The monster was around 10 meters long and was similar looking to a lobster. Through his spiritual senses, Evan also noticed that the monster's aura was in complete disarray, which means it was definitely injured by his earlier lightning arrow. It is a pity that it will turn into dust once I kill it, otherwise I would have definitely enjoyed a grilled lobster today, Evan muttered and swam towards the monster. Although the monster was injured, it still noticed Evan the moment he dived into the lake. When it sensed Evan was coming towards it at a rapid speed, the lobster's red eyes flashed with viciousness, and it opened its mouth. Water energy started to gather around its mouth, and the entire lake started to shake. When Evan felt the powerful energy fluctuations, he narrowed his eyes. It seems the water-type attacks are more powerful underwater, Evan said, and suddenly thought about something. Since the water-type skills are stronger underwater, then he stopped moving towards the lobster and pointed his palm towards it. The water energy continued to gather around the lobster's mouth, and in just a few seconds, the entire 4th floor was filled with the energy fluctuations that were coming out because of the large amount of water energy that it gathered. When the water energy reached its peak, the red eyes of the lobster shined like lanterns, and it shot all the gathered water energy towards Evan. Rumble. The entire lake started to shake, and Evan noticed a jet of water coming towards him like a beam of laser. When the jet of the water was just a few hundred meters away from him, Evan suddenly opened his mouth. "Sea dragons roar," he said in a low voice, and roar. A roar of a dragon reverted throughout the 4th floor, and a black water dragon shot out from Evan's palm. The roar was so powerful that the water jet that was coming towards him shook and its water energy became chaotic. The black water dragon and the chaotic water jet clashed against each other in an instant. Evan was prepared to see a large explosion, but to his surprise, the black water dragon swallowed the lobster's attack like there was a black hole inside its mouth, and continued to move forward. The speed at which the black dragon moved was even faster than the water jet that the lobster shot, so the black dragon arrived in front of the lobster in an instant. Seeing its attack was completely useless, the lobster wanted to move away. But because of the large amount of energy that it just used, and the injuries inflicted on it by the lightning arrow, the lobster wasn't able to move away in time. The black water dragon arrived in front of the giant lobster and swallowed it inside its mouth. A few seconds after the water dragon swallowed the lobster, crack, crack, the shell that was covering the lobster started to crack because of the water pressure, and the front part of the black dragon turned red because of the large amount of blood that came out of the lobster's body. Woo-oh! A strange scream echoed out throughout the underwater, and after a few seconds, its life aura completely disappeared. Although Evan was already prepared, he was still shocked because of the power of the sea dragon's raw skill, and looked at the place where the lobster was a moment ago, with a dazed look on his face. While he was standing inside the water with a dazed look on his face, a portal that led to the 5th floor appeared above the lake. Chapter 666 / 4th floor. Evan 5M 4 sec / Once Evan killed all the S rank and the rank 1 monster of the 4th floor, the 4th floor truly became a perfect picnic spot. Since Evan had to recover his mana before going to the 5th floor, he decided to stay on the 4th floor for a few hours and relax for a bit. He released all of his shadow undeads from his shadow storage, and in just a few seconds, the entire 4th floor, which was eerily quiet, became a party floor. Evan was floating like a log in the lake, basking in the warm sunlight. Adam, Elusia, Amara, Olivia and a few other of his shadow undeads were grilling meat on the beach of the small island, and Aqua, and a few other water-type monsters, turned a large part of the lake into an amusement park. Water slides that were a few kilometers high filled the lake, and his shadow undeads were playing on them. If I had to slide down from a slide that big in my past life, I would have definitely wet my pants, Evan muttered in a low voice, when he saw a water slide that was nearly 5 kilometers high. Around 3 hours later, after finishing the meat grilled by Olivia and others which was surprisingly good, Evan was finally ready to go to the 5th floor. He summoned all of his shadow undeads back into his shadow storage, and came in front of the portal which was leading to the 5th floor. He looked at the portal for a few seconds, and felt some powerful fire energy fluctuations coming from the other end of the portal. After confirming that the portal was the same as Mogul described to him, Evan took a deep breath and stepped forward, entering the 5th floor. After arriving on the 5th floor, Evan immediately started sweating because of its naturally high temperature, and was forced to circulate his mana to keep his body temperature in check. After circulating his mana, Evan looked around him and noticed that he was in a volcanic area. The ground was made of black volcanic rocks that formed after the magma cooled down, and the air was filled with ash. The sky was deep orange in color, and a few rivers of magma were flowing down from the top of the different volcanoes. Whoosh, whoosh. Gusts of hot wind brushed past Evan, and he felt a burning sensation all over his face. Heat poison, huh? Evan muttered when he felt the burning sensation on his face, and his skin started to turn black. Evan took out an antidote potion that Mogul had given to him before he entered the dungeon, and was about to drink it when he suddenly stopped. The burning sensation that he was feeling on his face started to die down, and his black skin also returned to normal. Evan raised an eyebrow when he saw this, and could not understand what was happening. Just when Evan was wondering why the heat poison didn't work on him, a notification flashed before his retina. The heat poison is nullified by your passive skill. Mid-grade poison resistance. Oh, a surprised expression flashed on Evan's face when he saw the notification. It is been so long since I got this skill that I completely forgot about it, Evan muttered to himself, and put away the antidote that he was about to use. Since I don't have to worry about the heat poison, it won't be too difficult for me to clear this floor, Evan said, and walked forward. The 5th floor is different from the previous 4 floors. Because, unlike the previous 4 floors where people's main concern was the monsters of the floors, the main concern on the 5th floor is its environment. The 5th floor is filled with heat poison, and the longer you stay on the 5th floor, the deadlier the heat poison becomes. Not only that, the temperature on the 5th floor is so high that people have to constantly use their mana in order to keep their bodies safe. Because of using mana to keep the temperature of their bodies in check, people can't use their full strength while fighting against the monsters of the 5th floor. Another reason this floor is very dangerous is because there is a restriction on this floor that forbids people from flying, so they can only walk on the scorching ground. According to the information, I need to kill the rank 1 monster living on the top of the tallest volcano to clear this floor, Evan said, looking at the tallest volcano that was around 500 kilometers away from him, and was nearly 10,000 meters high. Once he confirmed his destination, Evan bolted in the direction of the volcano. He wanted to clear this floor as quickly as possible, because although his mid-level poison resistance skill was able to ward off heat poison for the time being, he was not sure how long his skill would be able to protect him. While rushing towards the volcano, Evan felt some S-rank monsters coming towards him. When he felt the monsters coming towards him, Evan didn't slow down, and simply released some of his shadow undeads to take care of them. After coming out from his shadow storage, his shadow undeads rushed toward the monsters, and Evan continued to move in the direction of the volcano. Normally, people take 3 to 4 days to reach the volcano, because of the difficult environment of this floor. But Evan reached the bottom of the volcano in just 2 hours, since all the monsters were killed by his shadow undeads. Once Evan reached the bottom of the volcano, he could finally feel the aura of the rank 1 monster, who was residing at the top of it. Alright Asher, now it is up to you, Evan said after stopping at the bottom of the volcano, and looked at Asher, who nodded his head after hearing him. Fire energy gathered around Asher's feet, and he shot towards the top of the volcano. Asher is a fire demon, and he is already at the peak of rank 1, so he should be able to kill that monster in a few minutes, Evan muttered to himself seeing Asher going towards the top of the volcano. Boom. A few seconds after Asher left, powerful explosions started resounding from the top of the volcano, and fiery shock waves shattered the nearby small volcanoes. Because of the destruction of the volcanoes, a flood of magma swept through the floor, and Evan was forced to run away from there. Around 3 minutes later, the shock waves that were coming from the top of the volcano died down, and Evan noticed the aura of the rank 1 monster disappeared. Using the shadow senses, Evan talked to Asher and confirmed the monster's death. Once he confirmed that the monster was dead, he finally went to the top of the volcano and saw a portal that was leading to the 6th floor. Once I clear the 6th floor, I will finally face the 7th floor that no one was able to clear till now, Evan muttered and took a step forward, entering the portal of the 6th floor. Chapter 667 / 5th floor. Evan 2H9M21 sec / 6th floor. Evan 2H21M8 sec / What kind of FU asterisk king monster is this guy? Damn, I am sure he is cheating. There is no way someone can clear 6 floors in such a short period of time. Not to mention he is alone. Even a party of 50 S rankers will take at least 10 days to clear 6 floors, and this guy cleared all 6 floors in less than a day. Who cares how he is clearing the floors? Now he is on the 7th floor. I hope this guy clears all the floors, so that I can get the hell out of this damn place. You think he can clear the 7th floor that no one was able to clear for hundreds of years? I don't know, but I am hoping that he clears this entire dungeon. Mogul heard the conversation that was going on outside, and looked at the holographic screen with a hopeful look on his face. If he can clear this floor as well, then Mogul suddenly stopped speaking midway, and his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. How is this possible? He asked in a shocked-filled voice, as the holographic screen shook a bit, and something appeared on it. / 7th floor. Evan 16 sec / Everyone who was looking at the holographic screen took a step back and fell to the ground, not wanting to believe their eyes. I think the pub owner sold me expired liquor last night. I'm FU asterisk king hallucinating here, even though I didn't drink it. Me too, brother. I think the water I drank this morning was poisoned. A strange commotion occurred outside of the dungeon as people went crazy, seeing the time Evan had taken to clear the 7th floor. Like others, Mogul also looked at the liquor he was drinking with a suspicious look on his face, and used his spiritual senses to see if there was anything wrong with his body. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with his body, he took a deep breath and started to laugh like a madman. Inside the dungeon, on the 7th floor, Evan had his eyes wide open, and he was looking at the dead rank 1 orc with a look of disbelief on his face. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out of his mouth. In the end, he looked at Elijah, who was standing beside the dead rank 1 orc, and started clapping. Seeing Evan was clapping, other shadow undeads also started to clap. Hearing the sound of clapping, Elijah scratched the back of her head in embarrassment and bowed like a stage performer. Who would have thought that the floor that tens of S rankers were not able to clear in hundreds of years would be cleared by Elijah so easily, Evan said with a sigh, and looked at the dead rank 1 orc with pity-filled eyes. In order to clear the 7th floor, people have to kill a rank 1 orc. On the 7th floor, there was no other monster other than the rank 1 orc. Although people had to kill only a single rank 1 orc to clear the 7th floor, the reason no one was able to clear it till now was because of the different kinds of restrictions of the 7th floor. On the 7th floor, other than your physical strength, you can't use anything else. All of your skills, mana, world essence, artifacts including the ability beads, everything is useless on the 7th floor. You can use only your physical strength to kill the rank 1 orc. Moreover, because of the restrictions, only 10 people can enter the 7th floor at a time. The physical defense of an orc is already very high, and since it was a rank 1 orc that received the refinement of the world essence, it was nearly impossible for 10 S rankers, who couldn't even use their skills and artifacts, to clear this floor. During the past hundreds of years, thousands of people lost their lives on this floor, but no one was able to kill the orc, because the physical strength of the rank 1 orc is not something that 10 S ranker could handle. Evan was not afraid of the orc because he had enough confidence in his physical strength, and was sure that he could kill it. But when he arrived on the 7th floor, Elijah said she wanted to fight against the orc alone. Evan first wanted to refuse her, But when he remembered how he was defeated by her in the past, when they sparred just by using their physical strength, he agreed to let her fight. When the fight started, Evan thought that it would be a tough fight, but in just a few seconds, he realized just how wrong he was. The moment the fight started, the orc used his superior agility and instantly arrived behind Elijah. The speed at which the orc moved was so fast that even Evan found it difficult to follow his movements. After arriving behind Elijah, the orc threw a punch at her, wanting to crush her head. But just before the orc's punch could hit her, Elijah moved her head sideways and narrowly evaded the punch. Before the orc could recover his balance after missing the attack, Elijah grabbed his arm that he used to punch her, and using his high momentum against him, she lifted him up and slammed him down in front of her. Try to hide your muscle movements if you don't want to tell your opponent what you are planning to do, Elijah said to the orc, after slamming him down to the ground. Before the orc could come out of the shock after being slammed to the ground, Elijah lifted her hand and thrust it into the orc's eye. Roll! The orc let out a painful scream and tried to roll away from Elijah, but Elijah snorted when she felt the orc was trying to roll away. The black muscles of her hand, which she had thrust into orc's eyes, suddenly bulged out, and she started to shake her hand in a strange rhythm. As she started to shake her hand in a strange rhythm, powerful vibrations were born, and through her hand, which was still thrust into the orc's eye, those vibrations penetrated its brain, turning it into a meat paste. Row! The orc let out a roar filled with agony when its brain was destroyed, and soon its life aura disappeared. I promise I will never mess with Elijah, Evan muttered while gulping down his saliva, and looked at the portal that appeared after Elijah killed the orc. Evan was thinking about heading to the 8th floor once the portal appeared, but before he could enter the portal, Gobu suddenly called out to him. Hearing Gobu, Evan looked at him and saw Gobu was pointing some distance away from him. Master, I can feel the boundary of a hidden dimension from there. Evan raised an eyebrow in confusion when he heard Gobu, but suddenly he thought about something, and his expression changed. From hidden dimension, does he mean a ruin? Chapter 668. Evan followed behind Gobu, and soon arrived at the place from where Gobu could feel the boundary of the hidden dimension. After arriving there, Evan used the Eyes of the Abyss ability as well, and similar to Gobu, he was also able to see the hidden boundary of the dimension. Eyes of the Abyss. The eyes of the Eldritch Goblins are their most striking feature, with pupils resembling swirling voids. This grants them the ability to see beyond the normal spectrum of light, allowing them to perceive hidden truths and magical auras. The Eyes of the Abyss also help them to find the boundaries of the dimensions. In rare cases, some Eldritch Goblin might be able to awaken new abilities of Eyes of the Abyss. There must be a trigger around here that can open this hidden dimension, Evan muttered, and followed the path of magical energy that was being released by the boundary of the dimension. Following the path of the magical energy, Evan arrived in front of a small rock. So this is the trigger, huh? He muttered after arriving in front of the small rock and placed his hand on it. The moment Evan placed his hand on the rock, some energy fluctuations came out of the rock and enveloped his body. When Evan felt the energy fluctuations enveloping his body, a small smile appeared on his face. Swish! The next second, a bright light flashed, and Evan disappeared from the 7th floor and appeared inside the hidden dimension. Upon entering the hidden dimension, Evan found himself standing in an eerie-looking gloomy forest. All the trees of the forest were lacking vitality and were black in color. The sky of the hidden dimension was dark brown in color, and its air was filled with a strange energy that was trying to affect Evan's mind. When Evan felt the energy that was mixed in the air and was trying to affect his mind, he narrowed his eyes. This is Eldritch energy, Evan muttered in a low voice, and used his spiritual power to protect his mind. He looked back at Gobu, who followed him inside the dimension, and noticed that the air of the floor was rushing towards him. This floor is filled with the Eldritch energy, right? He asked Gobu to confirm his suspicion. Yes, Master. Gobu nodded his head hearing Evan, and looked towards the deeper area of the forest. I can feel there is a strong concentration of Eldritch energy within the forest. Evan looked in the direction Gobu was looking, and after a moment of consideration, started to move towards it. He did not use his spiritual senses to see the situation in the depths of the forest, because if the concentration of Eldritch energy turned out to be very high, it would corrupt his soul through his spiritual senses. While moving deeper into the forest, Evan didn't encounter any monsters. He also noticed that the power of the eldritch energy was increasing the deeper he moved into the forest. Around 40 minutes later, Evan and Gobu arrived near the center area of the forest. The power of eldritch energy around the center area was so strong that even Evan had to use all of his spiritual power to protect his mind. If Evan doesn't protect his mind from the eldritch energy, he will become crazy, similar to what happens to people when they come in contact with Gobu's skill, Madness Induction. I'm glad I didn't use my spiritual senses to scan this area, otherwise it definitely would have been dangerous, Evan thought to himself, after feeling the power of eldritch energy coming from the center of the forest. After a few more minutes of walking, Evan and Gobu suddenly stopped and looked in front of them with startled eyes. What the hell is this thing? Evan muttered in a shocked voice. Even Gobu, who never shows any kind of expression on his hideous-looking face, was stunned when he saw what was in the center of the forest. In front of Evan and Gobu, a strange dog-like creature that was purple in color and was about 20 meters big, was sleeping under a withered black tree. The back of the dog was filled with deep yellow eyes, and the area around its stomach was filled with small mouths that were filled with sharp teeth. Tens of deformed limbs were coming out from both sides of its body, and 2 small horns were coming out from the top of its head. Eldritch energy was constantly leaking out from its body, and the aura around it was far more powerful than any other aura that Evan had felt till now. This creature is strong and dangerous. This was the first thought that came into Evan's mind after seeing the dog-like creature. The eldritch energy around it was so strong that Evan couldn't even compare Gobu's eldritch energy to it. Suddenly, Evan noticed a small golden-colored paper hovering some distance away from the dog. Is that the reward for clearing this ruin? Evan said inwardly when he saw the golden-colored paper. He did not why, but the moment he looked at the golden-colored paper, Evan's inner voice started to scream at him to get his hands on that golden-colored paper. What kind of reward is that golden-colored paper? He wondered and looked back at the sleeping dog. To be honest, Evan wanted nothing more than to go ahead and put that golden paper into his shadow storage. But in reality, he couldn't do so for 2 reasons. First, the eldritch creature was giving him a very bad feeling, and he was sure that it wouldn't be easy for him to defeat it. Second, his main goal is to clear the dungeon, so that he can get the dungeon clearing reward, according to the soul contract he had signed with the clan leaders. But instead of clearing the dungeon, if he kills the eldritch creature in front of him and clears the ruin, he will be immediately teleported out of the dungeon. In the soul contract, it was clearly stated that I will do my best to clear this dungeon. If instead of clearing the dungeon, I focus on clearing the ruin, it might trigger the soul contract, Evan muttered with a frown on his face. Wait a minute, suddenly Evan thought about something and his eyes lit up. He looked at the golden-colored paper for a few seconds and took a deep breath. I don't know if this trick will work or not, but this is the only thing that I can do if I want to get both of the rewards from the dungeon, he thought inwardly, and glanced at the sleeping eldritch creature. After looking at the creature for a few minutes, he turned around and started to walk towards the exit portal of the ruin. Let's hope this method will work, and I will be able to get both of the rewards, Evan muttered in a low voice while walking away. Soon he arrived in front of the exit portal of the ruin and left the hidden dimension, returning back to the 7th floor. Chapter 669. After leaving the ruin, Evan came in front of the portal which was leading to the 8th floor. I had information about all the 7 floors, which is why it was not difficult to clear them, Evan muttered and took a deep breath. But from now on I don't know what kind of *T I will have to face after going to the next floor. Evan stood in front of the portal for a few minutes, and finally took a step forward. The moment he took a step forward, the portal flashed and he disappeared from the 7th floor. Upon entering the 8th floor, Evan found himself standing in the middle of a completely dark area. Other than the darkness, there was nothing around him. What is this quote? Poochie. F***K. Before Evan could understand where he was, a sharp sword pierced the left side of his back, barely missing his heart. Red blood gushed out, and Evan quickly used Flicker Step skill to move away from his position. Damn, after moving away, he tried to stop the blood with his hand, and looked at the place where he was standing a moment ago. But when he looked at the place where he was standing a moment ago, Evan was shocked because he didn't see the person who attacked him. He activated his regeneration skill to heal his wound. and used spiritual senses to look for the person who just attacked him. But to Evan's shock, he was not able to find anyone in that dark area using his spiritual senses. What the hell is going on here? Evan muttered and tried to summon all of his shadow undeads. But when Evan tried to summon his shadow undeads, he was once again shocked because he realized he couldn't summon them. He tried to use his shadow senses skill to communicate with them, but found it was also useless. Swish. Arg! Suddenly, another sharp sword light flashed, and a deep wound appeared on Evan's back. Damn, who is this sneaky bastard? Evan cursed and started to move here and there to avoid the attacks. He was still using his spiritual senses, but even then he wasn't able to find the attacker. While moving, he continued to try to summon his shadow undeads, but it was completely useless, because for some reason, he couldn't summon them. Whoosh. Poochie. FU*KUMOTHER. Evan cursed when another deep wound appeared on his right hand. Even though he was constantly moving, he increased his moving speed, and used the regeneration skill to its full power to heal all of his injuries. I can't go on like this, Evan said inwardly when he noticed it was getting harder for him to heal his injuries with the regeneration skill. He once again used his spiritual senses to scan the dark area to see if he could find anything. But just like before, it was useless because he did not find anything. Swish. Damn, another sword light flashed, and a deep wound appeared on Evan's leg. Because of the wound, he stopped moving and dropped to one of his knees. The moment he dropped to his knees, all hairs on Evan's body stood up to no end, and he immediately rolled away from the place he dropped. Whoosh, 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 dash. The moment Evan rolled away, tens of sword light appeared there out of nowhere, and pierced the dark ground. Cold sweat appeared on Evan's forehead when he saw this, because if hadn't moved away in time, his entire body would have been punctured by the tens of sword lights. I still can't see the person who is attacking me, even though he just used such a powerful move, Evan thought inwardly, and focused his regeneration skill to heal the wound on his leg. Once the wound on his leg stopped bleeding, he immediately stood up and moved away from his position. After moving away, he once again tried to look for the attacker, but the result was the same as before, and he couldn't find anyone. As the situation was becoming dangerous, Evan suddenly thought of something and looked at the dark area around him. Is there something wrong with this place? He said to himself when he realized the strangeness of the situation. Since my spiritual senses and vision are useless, then Evan said to himself, and used the Eyes of the Abyss ability of Gobu. The moment Evan used the Eyes of the Abyss ability, he noticed the entire dark place was filled with a powerful spiritual energy. This quote, when Evan noticed the spiritual energy that was filling the entire area, something clicked in his mind, and he finally understood what was happening. This FU*King dungeon, he muttered in a low voice, and looked at the powerful spiritual energy that was filling the entire dark area. On the last floor, I had to prove my physical strength. Then does it mean I have to prove my spiritual power here? Evan was still using the Eyes of the Abyss, so he noticed how the spiritual energy that was filling the area suddenly turned into a sharp sword light and moved towards him. Seeing the sharp sword coming towards him, Evan quickly jumped away from the place he was standing and dodged the sword light. I wasn't able to find the attacker because there is no attacker here, Evan said to himself after dodging the sword light, and his eyes turned sharp. The spiritual power which was concentrated deep within his soul started to shake in the next second. Arg! He released all of his spiritual power without holding back. Because of Evan's spiritual power, the spiritual power that was covering the dark place was pushed away. As Evan's spiritual power started to fill the dark area, the space of the dark area started to crack. Crack, crack, crack. Evan noticed how the space around him was cracking, but he didn't care about it, and continued to push his spiritual power to its limits. Soon his spiritual power covered the entire dark area, and its space was filled with cracks. Break! Evan suddenly shouted, and a storm of spiritual power erupted from his body. The moment his spiritual power erupted in full force, the space of the dark area crumbled. Evan's mind went blank for a moment when the dark space collapsed, but it didn't last long, because soon Evan found himself standing in a small room. Argu! Because of using his spiritual power to its limit, Evan groaned in pain the moment he regained his senses, and dropped to the ground while panting heavily. After coming out of the dark area, Evan first tried to summon his shadow undeads. and noticed he could summon them once again. Whoosh! Suddenly, a bright light shone in the room where Evan was panting heavily, and a portal leading to the 9th floor appeared in front of him. Chapter 670 / 8th floor. Evan, 9M, 12 sec. / FU *K. He cleared the 8th floor as well. He is clearing these floors even faster than the lower floors. Is there some kind of hack inside the dungeon that we don't know about? Damn it, I am going to beat down that bar owner. He definitely sold me the wrong liquor. I didn't even drink it, but I am already hallucinating. A commotion occurred outside of the dungeon, the moment Evan's name once again appeared on the holographic screen, indicating that he cleared the 8th floor as well. The various people of the 4 great clans immediately sent the news to Noir, and others as they were told to inform them about Evan's progress. When Noir, Illumi and Edward received the news that Evan cleared the 8th floor, they couldn't contain themselves, and decided to come to the dungeon town as well. In order to come to the dungeon town as soon as possible, they even used the teleportation gate that was connected to the dungeon town. Normally, the people of the 4 great clans use the teleportation gate only in cases of emergency, because it requires them to use a large number of essence stones. But this time they didn't care about the essence stones, and used the teleportation gate without hesitation. In just a few minutes after Evan cleared the 8th floor, Noir, Edward and Illumi arrived in the dungeon town, and found Mogul, who was once again looking at his drink with a suspicious look on his piggy-like face. When Mogul noticed Edward and others, he pointed at the liquor he was drinking and said in a voice full of certainty, "I don't know what's wrong with this cheap liquor, but it can get you drunk even if you are a rank 1 core evolver." When Edward and others heard Mogul, they looked at him with strange eyes, not understanding what was wrong with him. Eventually, they decided to ignore Mogul for the time being, and looked at the holographic screen, and the moment they looked at the screen, they finally understood why Mogul was acting like this. / 1st floor. Evan, 9M, 14C. / 2nd floor. Evan, 38M, 21 sec. / 3rd floor. Evan, 3M, 19 sec. / 4th floor. Evan, 5M, 4 sec. / 5th floor. Evan, 2H, 9M, 21 sec. / 6th floor. Evan, 2H, 21M, 8 sec. / 7th floor. Evan, 16 sec. / 8th floor. Evan, 9M, 12 sec. / What the FU *K is wrong with this guy? All of them thought at the same time, seeing the total time that Evan had taken to clear all the 8 floors. While the commotion was occurring outside of the dungeon, Evan was trying to regain his breath after using his spiritual power to its limit. This dungeon is just a FU *King trap, he couldn't help but comment while panting heavily. The fact that 10S rankers have to kill a rank 1 orc just by using their physical strength to clear the 7th floor is already absurd, but even then, this is within the realm of possibility. But there is no way any S ranker can clear the 8th floor. If the S rankers enter the 8th floor, the only thing that is waiting for them is a certain death. Unlike physical power, which you can increase by training and many other things, you can't increase your spiritual power easily. Evan's current spiritual power is almost comparable to a peak rank 1 core evolver, because of his abnormal soul. But even then, it was not easy for him to clear the 8th floor. If S rankers somehow managed to clear the 7th floor and reach the 8th floor, there is no way they would be able to break free from the dark space with their low spiritual power. If I didn't have the ability Eyes of the Abyss, I don't even know if I could have cleared this floor, Evan muttered, looking at the portal that was leading to the 9th floor. As Evan looked at the portal, a thought suddenly came into his mind. The Tower of Ascension requires a large amount of energy to function, which is why all those who die within the world domain turn to dust, as their entire essence is absorbed by the tower spirit. Evan muttered inwardly and narrowed his eyes. Given the difficulty of the dungeon, could it be that this dungeon was created by the spirit of the tower to gather more energy, since this dungeon is basically a death trap for S rankers? Evan thought about it for a few seconds and sighed lightly. Even if what I just thought is true, there is nothing I can do about it. he said, and lay down on the ground to recover his spiritual power. If Evan wanted to, he could have left the dungeon without clearing it. In the soul contract, he added a term that he would put his safety above anything else. Now that Evan was feeling that he would be in danger if he went to the 9th floor, he could leave the dungeon without breaking the soul contract. Although I want to leave, my inner voice is telling me that I will regret it in future. If I don't clear this dungeon now, Evan muttered with a helpless look on his, and took out a potion to help him recover his spiritual power. Around 3 hours later, Evan fully recovered and looked at the portal. Here goes nothing, he muttered and entered the portal. Upon reaching the 9th floor, Evan once again found himself standing in a small room. Defeat your fear in order to clear the 9th floor. A notification flashed before Evan's eyes the moment he arrived on the 9th floor. What is this? He muttered with a frown on his face after reading the notification. Suddenly, Evan felt a strange power scanning his soul, as if trying to read all of his memories. Evan was baffled when he felt this, and tried to use his spiritual power to resist the power that was trying to read his memories. But to Evan's shock, he found he could not do anything against the power that was scanning his soul. What the heck is happening now? While Evan was trying to resist the power that was trying to read his memories, deep within his soul, a sphere of black smoke appeared out of nowhere. Just as the black smoke appeared, the power that was trying to read Evan's memories halted. Suddenly, 2 small black dots that looked like someone's eyes opened within the smoke. The gaze of the black eyes pierced through the veil of space, and landed on the Tower of Ascension. The moment the gaze of the black eyes landed on the tower, the people who were standing near the tower felt as if the tower shook for a split second. After looking at the tower for a few seconds, the black eyes that opened once again closed, and Evan's soul returned to its normal state. Damn, who the hell is trying to read my memories? Evan was still trying to stop the energy that was trying to read his memories, when the power that was scanning his soul suddenly disappeared. Evan was stunned when the power that was scanning his soul suddenly disappeared. What is happening? No quote. Evan was confused because of the strange event, and wanted to know what was going on. But before he could understand his situation, the space in front of him flickered, and a portal that was leading to the 10th floor appeared there. Chapter 671 / 9th floor. Evan 6 sec / What the fu*k just happened? Evan muttered in a dazed voice, looking at the portal that was leading to the 10th and the final floor of the dungeon. Just a few seconds ago, he felt someone trying to read his memories, but all of a sudden, that feeling disappeared, and the portal leading to the 10th floor appeared before him. Is this some kind of trap? Evan asked himself in a doubtful voice and looked at the portal with furrowed eyebrows. He thought about the things that just happened and sighed with a frustrated look on his face, because he could not understand what was happening. Even if this portal is a trap, I don't think I have any choice but to enter it, Evan said after a moment when he didn't find anything other than the portal in the room. He looked at the port for a few seconds, and finally took a step forward, entering the portal. The moment Evan's body touched the portal flashed and he disappeared from the 9th floor. When he regained his senses after entering the portal, Evan found himself standing in front of a massive gate that was releasing an intimidating aura. Seeing the massive gate, Evan sighed in relief and a small smile appeared on his face. I don't know what happened on the 9th floor, but it seems like I cleared it somehow, Evan said in a low voice, seeing the massive gate that was the sign of the boss room located on the 10th floor. After confirming he was indeed on the 10th floor, Evan's expression turned serious. It is time to see whether I can take the rewards of the ruin and the dungeon at the same time, Evan said, and used his shadow clone skill to create his clone. After creating his shadow clone, Evan released most of his shadow undeads, including Asher, Elijah, Snow, Gobu and others, keeping only 500 shadow undeads in his shadow storage. After creating his clone and releasing shadow undeads, Evan returned back to the 7th floor, leaving his clone and shadow undeads on the 10th floor. After returning to the 7th floor, Evan immediately walked in front of the small rock, and entered the hidden dimension once again. Upon entering the hidden dimension, he once again found himself standing in the eerie-looking black forest. After coming back to the forest, Evan wasted no time and swiftly moved in the direction of the eldritch creature. In just a few minutes, Evan reached the center of the forest, and saw the dog-like eldritch creature, still sleeping under the withered giant black tree. After seeing the eldritch creature, Evan took a deep breath, and used his connection with his clone. "Go ahead," he instructed his clone, who quickly responded and opened the door of the booze room, entering along with the shadow undeads. When his clone and shadow undeads passed through the boss room gate, they found themselves standing in the middle of a vast empty plain. But no one paid any attention to their surroundings, as their eyes were fixed on the huge rhinoceros who was looking at them with its cold blue eyes. The rhinoceros was grey in color and was standing 15 meters tall. A 20 inches long sharp dagger-like curved horn was coming out from top of its nose, and sparks of lightning were crackling around it. The aura around the rhinoceros was slightly stronger than Ash's aura, and it was also at the peak of rank 1. "No matter what you have to do, kill it as soon as possible," Evan ordered his shadow undeads, once they entered the boss room. Hearing Evan's order, Asher took the lead and charged towards the rhinoceros. Seeing Asher coming towards it, the rhinoceros immediately used its domain. In an area of 500 meters, the density of the lightning elements suddenly increased, and the power of all of the rhinoceros skill increased greatly. At the same time, all the shadow undeads who were still S-rankers felt the suppression of the domain, and their powers dropped by a considerable amount. When Asher noticed Rhinoceros's domain, he snorted and unleashed his own domain. Although the rhinoceros's aura was slightly stronger than Asher's aura, Asher was still able to offset the effect of the rhinoceros's domain, and allowed all of the shadow undeads to regain their peak strength. As the battle between the shadow undeads and the rhinoceros broke out, Evan's shadow clone retreated from them, so that it would not be caught in the middle of their fight. Through his clone's eyes, Evan watched the fight between his shadow undeads and the rhinoceros, with a serious look on his face. While watching the fight, he was continuously using his mana to heal his shadow undeads, so that their numbers won't decrease. As the fight continued, wounds started to cover the rhinoceros's body. Although the rhinoceros was slightly stronger than Asher, it couldn't do anything when thousands of S-rankers attacked it at the same time without caring about their injuries. Suddenly, Elijah took advantage of a wound that Asher inflicted on the rhinoceros's body, and dug her spear deeper into its back. After piercing its back, Elijah released a burst of mana into its body, causing significant damage to its internal organs. Row! The rhinoceros roared out in pain and coughed out a large mouthful of blood. "It should be over soon," Evans said when he noticed the rhinoceros was reaching its limit. Around 3 minutes later, the rhinoceros' giant body dropped to the ground, and its life aura disappeared. Soon the body of the rhinoceros turned into dust, and a small silver-colored paper appeared at the place where the rhinoceros body was a moment ago. Just as the rhinoceros dropped dead and Evan noticed the clearing reward, his eyes turned sharp, and he ordered his clone to put it away into his shadow storage. Through the connected shadow storage, the silver-colored paper that the clone placed into its shadow storage appeared into Evan's shadow storage. The moment Evan confirmed that the dungeon clearing reward was in his shadow storage, he released the 500 shadow undeads whom he brought with him. "I have to kill this eldritch creature before the dungeon sends me out," he said after releasing his shadow undeads, and activated his shadow possession skill. Chapter 672. If this were a normal dungeon, Evan would have snatched the ruins reward without killing the eldritch creature, and would have escaped from there. Generally, people can't take the reward from the ruins without killing the monster guarding it, but Evan has the title Rule Breaker that allows him to ignore all the rules of a dungeon. Using the effect of his title, he can take the reward of the ruin even without killing the monster guarding it. But the problem is that the world domain is really a strange place. Since the moment he entered the world domain, all 3 of his titles lost their effects. Be it the Rule Breaker or the Master of the Shadow Realm, all of his titles lost their effects. His title, the Cursed One, even disappeared from his status window. At first, Evan thought it was only his title, the Cursed One, that was not working. But when he reached the 4th floor where he wasn't able to scan the lake using his spiritual senses because of the rules of the floor, he realized that even his title Rule Breaker was not working. If he could have used the effect of the Rule Breaker title, he would have directly shot down the rank 1 monster using his lightning bow, without entering the lake water. On the 4th floor, even though Evan was suspicious about the effects of his titles, he wasn't sure if they really stopped working. But his suspicion turned into certainty when he reached the 7th floor. On the 7th floor, he should have been able to use all of his skills and mana, because of the effect of his title, Rule Breaker. But just like other people, he was only able to use his physical strength on the 7th floor, which confirmed his guess that his titles were useless in the world domain. After realizing his titles were not working, Evan knew that he had no choice but to kill the eldritch creature if he wanted to take the reward of the ruins. The moment Evan released all 500 of his shadow undeads that he brought with him, the hundreds of eyes of the dog-like eldritch creature snapped open, and it looked in their direction. Just as the eldritch creature looked at the shadow undeads, the space around them solidified, and a scary aura came pressing down on their bodies. If they were normal monsters, the shadow undeads would have already turned into scared puppies, because of the scary aura of the eldritch creature. But none of the shadow undead was a normal monster. All of them pushed their bodies to their limits, and shot their attacks towards it without caring about their bodies that were breaking apart due to the pressure. A surprised look flashed in the eyes of the eldritch creature as it saw the shadow undead still able to attack it despite being under the effect of its domain. Although the shadow undeads attacked it, the power of their attacks was so low that the eldritch creature didn't even bother to stand up and simply slashed using one of its claws, sending a wave of eldritch energy towards the attacks. The attacks of the shadow undeads and the wave of eldritch energy clashed against each other, and boom! A massive explosion shook the entire forest, and all attacks of the shadow undeads were destroyed by eldritch energy. Black smoke filled all around, and due to the influence of eldritch energy, the bodies of the shadow undead started disintegrating when they came in contact with the black smoke. Although the eldritch creature easily destroyed all the attacks of the shadow undeads, not standing up when it had the chance was its biggest mistake. Crackle! Amid the black smoke, a spark of red lightning suddenly crackled. The eldritch creature felt something was amiss when it noticed the spark of red lightning and tried to stand up. But before it could stand up, whoosh! A blood lightning spear tore through the black smoke and came towards it like a missile. Although the spear came towards it at the speed of light, the eldritch creature did not panic, and a purple-colored shield formed in front of it. The blood lightning spear reached in front of the shield in an instant, and just before it collided against the shield, a chilly demonic voice rang out. Master of the Shadows. Swish! A black aura suddenly covered the blood lightning spear, and a forbidding feeling of doom engulfed the eldritch creature. Master of Shadows, authority. Using your authority, Master of Shadows, you can give absolute effect to all of your skills. During the absolute effect, all of your skills will ignore 100% defense of the target, your skills won't be restricted by your rank, and the chances of the critical hit increase by 75%. After activating the authority, the absolute effect of Master of Shadows will last for 20 seconds. Master of Shadows authority can only be used once a month, and it requires World Essence to activate. The blood lightning spear finally came into contact with the shield and cracked. The shield shattered like a fragile glass. The eyes of the eldritch creature widened in disbelief, and it tried to move away from the path of the spear. Although the eldritch creature tried to move away, it was already too late. The blood lightning spear pierced its tough skin and dug deeper into its body. The blood lightning's primary effect of destruction came into effect, and it started to destroy the internal organs of the eldritch creature. Woof! The eldritch creature howled in pain, and started to cough out grey Kolru blood. Whoosh! Suddenly, a gust of wind blew away the smoke that was covering the area, and a black werewolf that was covered in blood lightning appeared there. The dungeon is sending me out, Evan thought inwardly when he felt he was about to teleport out of the dungeon, and looked at the eldritch creature, who was still brimming with vitality. Although the blood lightning spear that was powered by his authority Master of Shadows was very powerful, it was far from enough to kill an eldritch creature. Noticing he just had a few seconds to kill the eldritch creature, Evan used the blood lightning to boost his agility, and appeared in front of the eldritch creature in an instant. The eldritch creature was still howling in pain because of the lightning spear that was making a mess inside his body, so it wasn't able to do anything when Evan arrived in front of it. Time seemed to slow down in Evan's eyes as he activated the temporal velocity skill. He watched in slow motion as how the eldritch creature was howling in pain. Bloodlust. Crimson Veil. Evan suddenly activated both of Albella's unique skills at the same time, and his aura reached a frightening level. Bloodlust unique skill, when activated, increases the user's power by 300% for the duration of 3 minutes. While the skill is activated, the user will have a strong urge to kill, and there is a high chance that he will lose his rationality and will become a mindless killer. Crimson Veil, unique skill. Using the blood lightning as the medium, the user can become partially incorporeal. While in this state, the user can phase through obstacles and attacks. This state will last for 15 seconds. The power of skills increases by 150% while the user is in a partially incorporeal state. Cooldown time, 6 hours. Rumble. The entire hidden dimension started to shake because of Evan's terrifying aura, and even the eldritch creature who was howling in pain felt a suffocating feeling engulfing its body. The shadow energy inside Evan's monic core started to move, and he brought palms of both of his hands closer to each other. Crackle. Lightning crackled and a ball of black blood lightning started to form between the palms of his hands. The space barrier of the entire hidden dimension started to shake, and a terrifying aura filled the surroundings. The eyes of the eldritch creature widened in disbelief when it felt the aura of the lightning ball. The eldritch creature wanted to move away from its position, but before it could move away, soul absorption. Evan sacrificed 10,000 souls to increase the power of black blood lightning, and released the concentrated black blood lightning towards the eldritch creature like a mana cannon. Chapter 673. Just as Evan used the soul absorption skill, the power of the black blood lightning reached a horrifying level. Evan's hands that he was using to hold the lightning orb started to disintegrate under the power of the lightning. Although his hands were disintegrating, Evan didn't care about it, and released the power of the lightning orb towards the eldritch creature like a mana cannon. The beam of lightning engulfed the entire body of the eldritch creature, and moved forward like an apocalyptic cannon, destroying everything that came into its way. The eldritch creature howled in horror when it was engulfed by the beam of the black blood lightning, and in less than a second, its body was disinterested, similar to Evan's hand. Thud. Evan suddenly heard a thudding sound, and noticed a small limb of the eldritch creature that somehow survived the onslaught of the lightning. Evan didn't care about the small limb, because his body already become half transparent, which meant he was about to be sent out of the dungeon. Evan was feeling a sharp pain after losing both of his hands, but he did not even use the death transfer skill, and immediately rushed towards the golden-colored paper. That was the reward for clearing the dungeon. After reaching in front of the paper, he tried to grab it using one of his legs, but when he tried to grab the paper, a strange power stopped Evan's movement, preventing him from taking the paper. What the quote? Evan was stunned when he wasn't able to take the paper, and his mind raced to find a reason for it. He was still using the temporal velocity skill, so his mind processed everything within a split second, and he immediately found the reason. The eldritch creature is still alive, he thought, and looked at the small limb which wasn't destroyed earlier. Evan could feel that he would be sent out in less than 2 seconds, and if he didn't destroy that limb, he would not be able to take the reward of the ruin. Feeling the urgency of the situation, a look of resolve flashed in Evan's eyes. Without wasting even a microsecond, he used his lightning skill. Suddenly, a storm of black blood lightning erupted from his body, and he unleashed it towards the small limb of the eldritch creature. Evan knew that he wouldn't be able to destroy the small limb on time if he simply used the black blood lightning, so immediately after releasing the lightning storm, he used 20,000 souls as fuel to increase its power. Arg! Evan screamed out in pain, as his entire body started to disintegrate under the effect of the powerful lightning. In just half a second, all of his skin disappeared, making him look like a hideous beast. The damage was so high that Evan was forced to use death transfer in order to not pass out and save his life. Puff. With a puffing sound, the small limb of the eldritch creature suddenly exploded and disappeared. Evan immediately stopped using the lightning storm, and looked at the golden-colored paper. Although he had used the death transfer skill less than a second ago, most of Evan's body was still in broken condition, because he did not immediately stop using the lightning storm after using the death transfer skill. 1.5 seconds had passed since Evan started using the lightning storm, and he only had half a second left before he was sent out of the dungeon. Evan's whole body was begging him to stop moving because of the pain he was feeling, but he gritted his teeth and stretched out his hand to grab the golden-colored paper. Suddenly a bright light engulfed Evan's body, and he disappeared from the hidden dimension. The moment bright light flashed, Evan felt his mind go blank, and he started to lose consciousness. Just before he fully lost consciousness and his vision turned dark, a notification flashed before his eyes. You have acquired the deeds of the Eldoria City. / ninth floor. Evan. 6 sec. / Damn, this guy is definitely cheating. How can someone clear higher level floors in just a few seconds? Maybe he is just too powerful. The atmosphere outside of the dungeon was lively, and people were engaged in a serious discussion. Most of the people were shocked because of the short time that Evan was taking to clear the floors, and were wondering how he was doing that. Mogul and others were also looking at the holographic screen with anticipation-filled looks, and were waiting for it to update again. Since Evan's name appeared on the 9th column, all of them knew that he was currently on the 10th floor, which was the last floor of the dungeon. As they continued to look at the holographic screen without blinking their eyes, they finally noticed a change in it after a few minutes. Mogul and others stood up from their seats, and their hearts started to beat like war drums. Suddenly, the holographic screen shook a bit, and something appeared on the 10th column. / 10th floor. Evan. 5M. 48 sec. / The moment the last column of the holographic screen lit up and Evan's name appeared on it, the surroundings of the outside of the dungeon became completely silent. People stopped talking, and the only sound that could be heard were the heartbeats of the people. Boom, 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 dash. Suddenly, powerful auras filled the surroundings as Mogul and others lost control over their emotions. Although all the people who were present there felt a suffocating pressure, no one reacted to it, and they just continued to look at the holographic screen without saying anything. Around 15 seconds later, a bright white light flashed outside of the dungeon portal and whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All the shadow undeads who were on the 10th floor started to appear there one by one. In less than 3 seconds, all the shadow undeads who were on the 10th floor appeared outside of the dungeon. Just when people were wondering where so many black monsters came from, another bright white light flashed and thud. Along with a few more shadow undeads, a black naked unconscious werewolf also appeared outside of the dungeon. Chapter 674. In a darkly lit room, Evan slowly opened his eyes. A momentary look of confusion flashed in his dark black eyes. Then he remembered what had happened before he fainted. Remembering what had happened before he fainted, he quickly sat up and looked around him to assess his surroundings. After seeing that he was lying on a comfortable bed instead of lying naked under the blue sky, he heaved a sigh of relief and looked at the condition of his body. It must be my shadow undeads who took out the clothes from my shadow storage and dressed me, Evan thought when he saw he was wearing one of the outfits that were inside his shadow storage. Once he assessed his situation, Evan used his spiritual senses and noticed he was in the building where he had stayed on his first night after coming to the dungeon town. Asher and his shadow undeads were standing guard outside of his room, and Kazal, Volak and Eclipse were hidden inside the room where he was sleeping. Good, Evan nodded his head in satisfaction, seeing how his shadow undeads acted while he was unconscious. He didn't spread his spiritual senses far from his room, because he didn't want to alert anyone that he had woken up. Before meeting Mogul and others, he first wanted to check what he had got after going through all the troubles. I didn't pay much attention to it earlier, but now that I think about it, I actually cleared that entire dungeon in just a single day. Huh? Evan muttered to himself with a weird look on his face. But he soon shook his head and stopped thinking about it. I still remember the moment I touched the golden paper that was the reward of the ruin. It turned into a golden light and went inside my body, Evan said, remembering what had happened just before he was sent out of the ruins. He opened his status window and looked at the notifications that he had received once the golden paper went inside his body. You have acquired the deed of the Eldoria City. Because of the deed of the Eldoria City, you have received the title Owner of the Eldoria City. Owner of the Eldoria City. This title grants you complete control over Eldoria City. While inside Eldoria City, you can control the laws of the world and manipulate them as you wish. Using the Owner of Eldoria City title, you can teleport back to Eldoria City once a year from anywhere in the world. After reading the details of his new title, Evan's eyes opened wide in shock, and his breathing quickened. This is insane, he said in a trembling voice, taking deep breaths to calm his heart, which was beating like a war drum. He didn't know what it meant to control the laws of the world, but his gut feeling was telling him that it was something insane and would play a major role in his future growth. Moreover, the fact that he could teleport back to Eldoria City once a year from anywhere in the world delighted him even more. Since I can teleport back here from anywhere in the world, that means I can come back here from Utopia too, right? Evan said to himself with a shocked look still etched on his face. As he was thinking about the possible usage of this title, another thing suddenly came into his mind. My title, the Cursed One, doesn't work here, so if I ever feel like this title is affecting me too much, I can come back here to get rid of its influence, he muttered in a low voice. Once Evan confirmed the effects of his new title, he could not help but feel delighted that he had not left the reward of the ruins behind. Oh right. I still have to see the reward that I received after clearing the dungeon. Evan suddenly thought about the silver-colored paper that his clone received on the 10th floor and looked into his shadow storage. Upon looking into his shadow storage, he noticed the silver-colored paper lying in one of the corners. Noticing the paper, he willed and the silver-colored paper appeared in front of him. Law Essence Pill can only be used by the natives of Eldoria City. Evan read the details of the silver-colored paper without any expression on his face. Once he read its details, he put it back into his shadow storage and stood up. Well, although this is not exactly the thing that they wanted, it is still better than nothing, he said to himself after standing up and used his spiritual senses to scan the entire building where he was staying. In just a few seconds, he found Mogul and others who were walking back and forth in the hall room of the building. They wanted to talk to Evan as soon as possible, but his shadow undeads didn't allow them to go near him while he was unconscious. Although they could have used their powers to forcefully meet Evan, they did not do so, because they did not want to fight unnecessarily. When Evan used his spiritual senses, he didn't try to hide his presence, so Mogul and others easily noticed that he had woken up. They wanted to rush towards him, but stopped when they felt he was coming towards them. Around a minute later, they saw Evan coming towards them. They were about to ask him about the reward that he had received after clearing the dungeon, but before they could ask him anything, Evan lifted one of his hands, signaling them to stop. I know you all have many questions, but first let's return to Eldoria City. There is something I need to confirm before doing anything else. Hearing Evan, Noir and the others looked at each other, and after a moment nodded their heads without asking anything. Let's use the teleportation gate to return back, Edward said, and no one objected to his suggestion. Evan already knew about the teleportation gate as Mogul had told him about it while they were moving towards the dungeon town, so he was not surprised when he heard them. Once they decided to use the teleportation gate, they did not waste any time, and immediately came to the teleportation building of the dungeon town. After entering the teleportation building, they activated the teleportation gate and returned to Eldoria City. Chapter 675. Evan and others used the teleportation gate and returned back Eldoria City. Can you tell us now what was the reward for clearing the dungeon? Mogul asked in an impatient voice once they returned to Eldoria City using the teleportation gate. Just wait a minute, Evan said, hearing Mogul, and stepped out of the teleportation gate building. Noir and others looked at each other in confusion, not understanding what Evan was trying to do. Although they were confused, they didn't ask him anything, and followed him out of the teleportation building. After coming out of the building, Evan used his shadow wings, and took into the blue sky of Eldoria City. Let's see. Once in the sky, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes. After closing his eyes, he tried to use his new title. As soon as Evan tried to use his new title, the atmosphere around him completely changed. Noir, Mogul, Illumi, and Edward, who were watching him from the ground in confusion, were stunned when they sensed the changes around him. Before they could tell that Evan was powerful and he would not be an easy opponent, but now they could not feel anything from him. They could not feel anything from him. It didn't mean he became weaker, on the contrary. Mogul and others could tell that he suddenly became so powerful that they could not gauge his strength anymore. As Evan tried to use his title, all of his senses suddenly increased exceptionally. He didn't even try to use his spiritual senses, but he was still able to see everything within the entire Eldoria City. From the city market to the center area of the city where the 4 great clans were located, he could see everything without any problems. Eldoria was a massive city, at least 10 times larger than a start city. But even then, Evan was easily able to see everything within the entire city. As he thought about the effect of his title and tried to use the laws of the world, Evan suddenly felt a strange power coursing through his entire body. The moment Evan felt the power that was coursing through his body, he didn't know why, but he felt like he could do anything. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at the clear blue sky. Looking at the clear blue sky, he slowly opened his mouth. Rain, he uttered in a low voice. Although Evan uttered the word in a low voice, for some reason, it resounded throughout the Eldoria city like heavenly thunder. All the people of the Eldoria city looked at the sky and noticed the bright blue sky suddenly started to darken, and black clouds covered the sky in an instant. People were stunned when they saw this because they had never seen such an unusual occurrence, where the clear sky was suddenly covered by dark clouds. Thuda. The sound of thunder echoed throughout the city, and it started to rain. Mogul and others looked at everything with shocked-filled eyes. Other people didn't know what was happening, but all four of them clearly heard what Evan said just a moment ago. Just what kind of reward did he receive after clearing the dungeon? Illumi asked in a voice filled with disbelief. Noir and others didn't reply to her, because this same question was running inside their minds. After seeing what Evan had just done, all of them were certain that if he wanted to kill them, all he would need to do was say a few words. I can't mess with him now, Mogul thought inwardly when he saw what just happened. Initially, he was thinking that if the dungeon's reward turned out to be something different than what they all thought, and did not help them break free from the restrictions, he would do everything in his power to snatch the domain breaker fruit from Evan. But after seeing what Evan just did and feeling the aura around him, all of those thoughts disappeared from his mind. Evan didn't care about what Mogul and others were thinking, and looked at the dark sky with a small smile on his face. Stop, he thought, and all the black clouds disappeared from the sky. Is this the power of world laws? Evan said, looking at his hands. Although he already expected world laws powers to be amazing, he was still surprised to see what he could do. He could feel the magma flowing deep underground in the Eldoria city, and he was sure that with just a single thought, he could control all the magma and plunge the entire city into chaos. This is insane, he could not help but comment, thinking about the power that the owner of the Eldoria city title grants him. Will I be able to control the laws of the world in the future without using this title? Evan suddenly muttered and felt that it was quite possible. Although he still wasn't sure because he did not have much knowledge of what he would have to do after creating his zone, he could feel that this title would definitely help him in the future. Arg, suddenly Evan felt a splitting headache, and noticed his body was breaking apart. Because of the law power that he was using, he immediately stopped using his title, and activated his death transfer skill. One of the shadow undeads that was inside his shadow storage was suddenly destroyed, and Evan's body returned to normal. F***K. That was close, Evan thought as cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He already knew that there would be consequences for using the law power with his current strength, so he wasn't surprised when he noticed his body started to break apart, due to the law power. I think I can use it only for a minute before my body starts to give up, Evan muttered in a low voice, and looked at Mogul and others, who were still looking at him with shocked filled with eyes. It is good that they did not notice my body was about to blow up just now, he thought, and came down from the sky. Now that I have confirmed the power of this title, I can give them the clearing reward of the dungeon, without worrying about anything. This is the end of this video. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed and wish you wonderful rest of the day. The Silent Ruptors out.